Good evening. I'll call this December 17th, 2024 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission special meeting in order. Jump right in. Sorry, it's a special meeting. Right into our public hearings. 131 Saskell Hill Road, re-subdivision application of grant NREs for 2 lots in an A zone. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Crusade, and I'm the attorney for the applicant. My office is at 3 Lafayette Street in Milford. With me tonight is Grant Pennerise, sitting to my right. This is a subdivision, or excuse me, a re-subdivision application for property located at 131 Saskell Hill Road. It's been, I believe, circulated to the different town agencies. A little bit of background on this. The property was re-subdivided previously in the 80s. It looked like 1982 is the map, and we've provided a map number 5066 from the Fairfield Land Records for the record. And I have copies if anyone would like to review it. But very simply, we're asking to go from 1 lot to 2. There was a determination made earlier this year or late last year by zoning that we had, because there had been a pool built on the vacant land, which was the second lot, this re-subdivision was required. So we filed the re-subdivision application. Both proposed lots will meet the subdivision and zoning regulations. We have the stormwater management report that has a stormwater management plan for 0 runoff for the property. There's a little bit more background. When my client purchased the property, originally it had been advertised by on the MLS as subdividable. So it's well known. I know that there's some neighborhood opposition or some objections you'll probably hear tonight, but it's been known by the Fairfield Town Records and maybe by some folks in the neighborhood that it is a subdividable lot. I purchased it a few years ago. I don't have any other questions other than that the proposal for the stormwater drainage is that there'll be roof leaders that will go into 2 concrete galleys, curbs and concrete sidewalks pursuant to the town ordinances and codes are being required by the town public works. I think some of the neighborhood opposition is to the curbs and sidewalks because there's no other sidewalks on that cul-de-sac on that side of the street. My client, I don't know if this is something that the town is able to do. I don't know if the public works or this board would be able to waive that requirement based on certain circumstances, but my client has no concerns with waiving that requirement if necessary. But pending your questions, that's our application.
Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, good evening. I had a question about the sidewalk. There's a requirement to add a sidewalk?
Usually, yes, Fairfield, like a lot of towns, so that when you either substantial construction or a subdivision, it's concrete curbs and sidewalks to city standard.
And there's no other obviously sidewalk on that street. So.
To my knowledge, I did not see one, no.
And did you have WPCA permit?
I do not have a permit from the Waterproof Control Agency. I think that if we do, it'd be part of the permitting process when somebody pulls the building permit. There is public water and public sewer for this site, so I'm assuming you'd probably. I'm not sure what the standard is for single family houses, but.
And another question, can you explain the drainage system as relative to retention and water quality equipment?
I'll do my best to do that. So the drainage report was provided by HK Associates Professional Engineer. It's dated September 16th, 2024. It's part of the record. It has says existing construction of proposal as shown on the site plan, and the site plan, the detailed plan sheet shows the roof leaders and the concrete galleys. Has an impervious area of 22,890 square feet, which is 0.07 acres. The existing condition for the 25-year runoff requirement is 750 cubic feet, and the proposed condition is 1,503 cubic feet, which requires a retention of 753 cubic feet. And so the direct volume runoff will be detained in a 12-inch by 48-inch concrete galleys. I believe there's 2 of them proposed, one in the proposed front yard, and one in the rear yard, that are fed by concrete galleys. The engineer has lists an option, and this is getting outside of my expertise, but
Mine too.
Coltech 753 cubic.
Engineering's reviewed it.
To my best of my knowledge, yeah, I asked if there was any reports. I haven't seen anything from them.
Sure, we'll get a report from them.
We need a report before we decide that.
Email.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sightlines for the driveways.
Yeah, this proposed, there's the existing driveway, and then the proposed driveway would be on the side street.
Any questions?
Can you put the mic on because we can't hear him?
There's if that little, the mic is right at the end there.
Is it already on?
Close the door,
Yeah,
there's
that's
some
on.
activity outside.
Commissioner Randolph, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry, on the application for approval, I didn't, is this, the subdivision is as of right?
Excuse me, I'd like to say something.
Excuse me, no, it's not time for public comment.
We can't hear what's going
Okay, you
on.
can say that back there. I didn't hear a word you said, so I'll get people to speak up if you like.
There's supposed to be some sort of microphone that.
There
they
is a
can-
microphone we'll be using, but you don't need
All
to
right,
come up.
can you, anybody hear back
Man,
here?
that's not your job, please. Thank you. Please sit down.
Pay my taxes in this town, don't I?
I think so.
What's the purpose of having a meeting if you can't hear what's going on?
I'll try to speak up. That's maybe a little bit better. Sorry. Yep.
Ma'am, if you like, there's seats up in front too.
Well, okay, but tell me, folks, can you hear him when you were sitting
Go
over
ahead,
here?
sir. It's your turn.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
So the,
Yeah, so
so the subdivision, the question is the subdivision as of right? So it's as of right in the sense that we meet the subdivision regulations and the zoning regulations, and we had shown a proposed footprint of a house that would meet the zoning regulations. So yes,
so the minimum, just to confirm, because it was a little unclear in the application, you meet the minimum lot size?
oh, yes, correct. For both lots. Yeah,
Thank you.
correct.
Commissioner Corsillo.
You mentioned the previous subdivision.
Yes.
Which properties were part of the previous?
This exact same property was previously subdivided in almost the same manner that we're requesting tonight. I can show you
So
the,
you're not, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. You're not talking about other
No,
adjacent
no.
properties.
correct, that's correct.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Braun also has a question.
Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
One of the plans you showed had a different outline for the house. It looked like it was on top of the pool. I'm just trying to understand that plan versus this plan. There's 3 diagrams up there. It showed proposed setback line. Oh, that's just the setback line. That's not showing the house. Okay, so I understand that now. So if this gets approved, you will be knocking off part of the house on lot A, and you'll be keeping the pool on lot B, and you'll be stretching the new house on lot B. And the access will be on Tide Mill Terrace.
Correct. So the addition, there's a blue box that marks that addition would be removed so that we would be compliant with a new lot line side yard setback. The pool would remain, but it would have a house as the principal use, and the proposed driveway is proposed for the lot B would be Tide Mill, off of Tide Mill Terrace, correct?
Does it looks like the sidewalk is definitely within the yard. I don't know if that's a rear yard setback or a side yard setback. I can't tell what is that within, I'm asking this. I have 2 questions for Jim, actually. Jim went. Is that within the setback? Is that acceptable to have the driveway within the setback? It looks like it is for the new house. If it's coming off of Tide Mill Terrace between the 2 houses, is that where it's coming off of?
Right.
This is,
I'm not understanding your question, Kathy. This
Okay.
is the
Where's the
driveway.
sidewalk, where's the driveway rather for the new house?
Here.
Yeah, the driveway is on the upper, I don't know if you can see the screen that everyone's tracing around, but it's on the
Oh,
upper.
it's over there. I thought it was on the bottom. Okay, never mind.
But in any case, a driveway is not considered a structure because just by its nature, a driveway is going to extend to the street. So it's certainly
Okay.
going to into the street line setback.
Okay. And do you know the change in impervious surface before and after? I know that your stormwater says what it is now, but how much is it changing and how many trees, what's the net loss of trees that's going to happen? If you have the information.
so the last question first, we believe there would be 2 or 3 trees that would be removed. The proposed lot coverage meets the zoning regulations, and I am looking at the.
Actually, I mean impervious surface. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's the same as lot coverage, because that would include driveways, walkways, anything impervious.
so construction of proposal as shown on the site plan, this is from the engineering report, the impervious area equals 2,890 square feet. The existing impervious area would be less than that. I don't know if it's on the zoning table. I can try to find that information.
That would be basically the pool right now, because there's nothing else on there, right?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. And then as far as stormwater, I've been taking the stormwater seminar that DEP offers. And this is for Jim. Are we supposed to now follow the new stormwater manual? Because I think according to that, you have to retain more water than 1 inch. You have to retain the first 1.3 inches.
Um,
And
I
does
don't
not
know the
apply to
answer.
subdivisions.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can certainly have a response from the engineering department.
Okay, I was just looking at the stormwater report. And it says, I think it says 1 inch will be retained. So that means the first inch is retained. And then it percolates down through the system. And where does it end up? Does it end up in Pine Creek, or it goes through catch basins into Pine Creek?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question. It's proposed to go through the 12-inch by 48-inch concrete galleys.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm not sure if it then dissipates into the surface or where it would go from there. I think that would probably require extensive testing.
And is this in a flood zone? It must not be, because you're only building to 32 feet, which is the maximum allowed in the A zone.
Not that I'm aware of. There's
Okay.
no flood zone shown on the survey.
And did this require a wetlands permit? I don't know if somebody already asked that.
So there is a wetlands letter in the file that
Oh,
says
there is? Okay.
no wetlands interest
See it.
because there's no,
Sorry.
we're not within 150 feet or whatever the
100
water,
feet.
100 feet for
You're,
Fairfield.
okay, you're more than 100 feet from Pine Creek, I guess. Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, I had a question about the pool. So I understand the pool is staying there, or is the house is being built over the pool? I'm not clear on that.
So the intention, so that there's not waste involved with destroying the pool, is that pool would stay, and instead of being the serving the existing house, it would serve the proposed house.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I don't see the letter from engineering or wetlands. It must be in there somewhere.
Well, on engineering, wetlands is said to be in there, but we can confirm it.
I don't have access to the website at the moment, but
Okay.
it'll be there.
We can confirm it.
I didn't see anything for engineering.
I don't think we do yet. We'll reach out to engineering. Counselor, anything further
No, thank you.
for your initial presentation?
No, thank you.
Nothing further, I'll close the initial presentation portion of this application and open it up to public comments. Yeah, thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on 131 Sasko Hill Road? I'm sorry. It's gonna go first come, first served basis.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Adam Shapiro and I'm the property directly abutting 131 Sasko. I'm on Tide Mill Terrace. I just have a series of objections to the application.
Just what's your exact, I should have said, if you can just give your name, what you did, but your address as well.
Adam Shapiro, 60 Tide Mill Terrace.
Thank you.
I'm exactly right next to the property proposed to be developed. So I just have a series of problems and I'll just list them, forgive me. So first issue I have is the subdivision would yield approximately 0.2 to 0.25 acre lots in that region in Tide Mill Terrace. If you look on the map, you'll see no other properties on Tide Mill Terrace that are less than 0.5 acres. I also believe this also is on Sasko Hill. I don't believe in the full length of Sasko Hill, there are any properties that are less than it looks like 0.4 to 0.5 acres, but definitely not 0.2 to 0.25. So I think it's very out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. Overhill Road, though, does have some properties that are 0.2 to 0.25, but nothing immediately abutting this property. So I think it's completely out of character. I'm worried about the density of housing. I'm also concerned about the removal of trees that was previously mentioned. A lot of those trees are very old, add to the lushness of the neighborhood. And I think it'd be a detriment to the neighborhood to willingly remove those trees. And the drainage issue that was talked about before, Tide Mill Terrace already has a number of drainage problems. There's a lot of overflow from rainfall. And I am, with impervious surfaces increasing, I'm even more concerned that this will negatively impact the neighborhood. What else do I have? And that's really my major concerns, out of character and risk to the rest of the neighborhood.
Any other member of the public?
So how far are you from the subject property?
Literally right next door. So I'm 60 Tide Mill Terrace. The proposed house that he's building is going to be between 131 Sasko and my property. So whatever drainage issues, to be frank, is going to impact not only the entire street, because runoff goes through the entire street, but directly my property.
Any other member of the public which to be heard on one?
Just one more.
So, well, oh, sorry.
Really, I know, but we really shouldn't be asking public questions.
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead. Can I make one other comment?
Come on up.
Well, it's a quick one. I just know that
Okay, just so we can get you on.
a lot of this information, I found out about the hearing relatively abruptly, just like 24 hours ago. I know I sent an email to the zoning commission. I believe a large number of my fellow neighbors also sent emails
If any,
vociferously talking against this proposed subdivision. So I want to call attention to that. Just because I'm the only one doesn't mean there's not.
no. And any email sent to our TPZ email account gets distributed to us. And I mean, we take it as seriously as if they address us in person. So we understand that we have things that go on and such, and a written communication like that is just as valuable, similar value as you showing up tonight. So
Fantastic. And just, is there a vote happening today? This is just a presentation.
that's the
Can I get
presentation.
an idea of timeline on when the vote would occur?
More than likely our next hearing.
So
January the 14th.
There we go.
I'm sorry,
January the 14th.
Jan 14th, there will be a vote on this exact application.
Up for a vote.
Up for a vote. Okay, thank you.
We got public comment tonight and the hearing will be, I suspect, done tonight, so. Any other member of the public wish to be heard, at least in person, wish to be heard on this application? Seeing anybody, is there anybody signed up?
Two remote.
I have a comment.
We'll start with somebody, do we have,
Enrico Cacciatore is first, and then Matthew Halleck is second.
Mr. Cacciatore?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Great, and I'll put it on video as well. I'm Enrico Cacciatore. I'm again on the opposite side, across the street of Tide Mill Terrace. My address is 175 Sasko Hill Road. Our driveway looks at this house. I think I sent in a letter, but my biggest concerns are really, one is I understand it meets all the code requirements. But if you notice, in every dimension, you're maxing it out. You're maxing it in heights, you're maxing it out in width, setbacks, everything is being maxed out to the point the existing structure, you're cutting off the back of the house, which has there been an analysis on that structure? If that creates, because that's a big main part of the house. It's a living room. I believe there might even be a second story structure on there. So how does that impact the existing structure, especially from a foundational standpoint? And that's a big concern. The other thing is how the pool is structured, all the equipment, the electrical, the in-ground plumbing of that pool. What are they going to do about that? I think the other thing is you're not only impacting trees on the property, of which probably one of the biggest trees, if not the biggest tree in Fairfield, probably 100 years old. You're impacting Adam's tree, because if you look at the canopy of the tree that is next to his house with a 12.5-foot setback is going to be impacted. And then you also have trees on the abutting side, again, are going to be impacted. So as mentioned, there is already, a lot of the trees, unfortunately, were removed on some properties next to us that have created a massive drainage system, of which one property has continually had to do addition, fixing their runoff issues on their property. So, and the amount of water I've seen in the last 2 years coming onto my property has been concerning. So I really think you're going to lose at least 5 trees that are massive trees that, again, I understand what we're trying to do here if I was a property owner, but it really does not fit well with the community. And I really would be concerned, does the engineer, did he look at, again, you're talking about a tree that's 100 years old. The drainage that by removing that tree, as well as 2 to 3 other big trees. The other thing is the sidewalks will remove 4 other trees that are right near the property line. Those will have to be removed. Those are probably 20-year-old trees as well. So outside of the trees, and then maxing it out, you have 32 feet versus a 20-foot house, literally probably 10, 15 feet away. And then you have a house that's pretty close next to it. Again, probably very close. The privacy gets removed. The overall aesthetics of the neighborhood would diminish, impacting property values that would be a detriment to us all. And then I think I just think it's a density factor, and then the tree removal are the big things. And then again, the existing structure is going to be drastically impacted. Again, pool, plumbing, electrical, knocking off a majority of the house. So my point is the owner is optimizing based on the max code. I'm not a lawyer, not a property person or anything like that, but it's what is their true intention, right? Are they going to be living here? I don't think so. So I don't think his benefit does not benefit the community. Thank you.
Can you let me know where that tree is that you're talking about? The tall tree that could be impacted by the
Center of the house.
Pardon me?
The center of the new house.
Is that on his property or on somebody else's property?
It's on the new. It would be on the new property.
Oh, so we're not talking about a neighbor's tree that could be impacted.
Oh yeah, Adam. Yes, it's right against the. Literally, it's a.
Is that number 60 Tide Mill, or is that the house?
Yeah, 60 Tide Mill. Yep.
So 60 Tide Mill has a very tall tree, kind of where the driveway next to yours goes out.
Well, there's one there, and then if you go back, let me bring up. Adam's probably a better, since it's his property, but basically where you see the fence line, and if you go to basically the back side of the house and the far corner where Adam Shapiro. So it's basically in the center, further up. I don't know. Adam can probably answer that question since he's right there in the audience.
So look, we don't. This is the background for my question. we don't have a lot of discretion with subdivisions if it meets the requirements. However, we do have the capability of making sure we're making environmentally sound decisions. So I do have a concern about trees. I've been told that the roots go as far out as the canopy. So is there a possibility, Mr. Went, that we could get input from engineering, conservation, and the tree warden? I don't know if that's in the public right of way or not. It could be, but is that something the tree warden could at least give an opinion on, even if it's not in the public right of way? On whether this construction would, or excavation would harm the tree, if that's a specimen tree?
Yes, with respect to trees in the town right of way, no, with respect to trees on private property.
Could he render an opinion though? Or maybe I mean, somebody with expertise should, but. And then as far as conservation, you know, I looked at an aerial, it's hard to tell if we're 100 feet from Sasko Creek, and maybe Sasko Creek is 100%.
Commissioner Braun, we're in public comment right now, so let's.
The one other thing that you
Public
brought
comment.
up, the existing structure has two sump pumps. If I lose power, I have two sump pumps. The water level is extremely high, even though it's not considered a tidal. It is like when the power goes out, both of our properties, 131 and mine, literally will flood up. I mean, if I go into my concrete 1 or 2 feet, there is water table is right there, so it's extremely high. Two sump pumps that often are running maxed out at 131, because I know the prior owners, and I'm in the same situation. So water and water abatement is a big concern to me, and I witnessed the concern of other trees that have been removed and saw the ramifications of that. And then the other thing is, again, is if you look at the open structure where you can put those water retention, it's very limited, especially with the existing pool there, and then in the front of the house too, where you're putting it too, of which there's another tree literally it sits on the easement as well. That's probably a 60-foot tree that probably will have to go down too. So just to note that.
Okay, I appreciate your answering my question.
Thank you.
Could I add some context of the two trees he mentioned?
Another person wanted to speak.
Matthew Halleck is next.
Thank you. Halleck. Mr. Halleck, are you there?
Yes, I am. It froze up for a second. Thank you.
No worries, we can hear you. You just give your name and address.
Matthew Halleck, 6 Somerville Street, Fairfield. I live right around the corner from it. We're right down the road from Oldfield and a world away. Aside from having just a basic reluctance against any more subdivisions and increased density, it sort of rubs the wrong way. It is very close to the water, like that. I don't know if it's 100 feet or whatever from Sasko Creek, but it is part of that watershed. And like Enrique.
He freeze or did he drop? Mr. Halleck, are you there?
He's gone.
He's gone.
Oh, no, he's still there.
Okay. We'll let you ask your question in rebuttal. Mr. Halleck, are you there?
Back.
Mr. Halleck, there
Yes, I am here.
we go. Go ahead.
All right. So just regards with the closeness of the water, the fact that they're putting in way too much, shoving in as much square footage as they can on a small lot and leaving the pool there, it sort of goes against the grain. And that whole, the tree is very concerning. Fairfield is known for its trees, and to have a mature specimen like that, I would hope that Fairfield goes out of its way to help protect that. So just all in all, it just doesn't seem to be in the cards. Thank you.
Thank you. We got a quick one. Come back up. Be brief, please.
Yeah, Rick was mentioning 2 trees that were specifically in jeopardy on my property. So look in the corner of, basically the corner that directly abuts the applicant's property, that corner, which is my corner. There are at least 2 trees there of significant height. And if the root system does go the full canopy, it definitely is going to be into wherever he's planning on building. So I'm just calling at least 2. I think there may be actually 3.
Thank you. Any other member of the public in person or joining us remotely wish to be heard on this application? 131 Sasko Hill Road. If you're joining us by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
He has another question.
Well, I said we'll get to her. We'll do that in rebuttal. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on this application?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, got somebody.
It's not a name attached.
No name, that's fine, sir. There,
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, if you can just give your name and address, please.
Yep, my name is Greg Verado. I live on 86 Tide Mill Terrace. I'm right next to Mr. Shapiro. I'm 2 homes down from the proposed subdivision. So I have a lot of the same concerns as my fellow neighbors. I think this subdivision would be completely out of character for the neighborhood. I'm concerned about the height of the building. I really do think it's going to impact our property value and really not add value to the neighborhood. I'm concerned about the sidewalks. I don't really see the purpose that they're serving. They're literally sidewalks that are going nowhere. But one of my bigger concerns is, outside of the trees and the flooding issues that I think it could cause, I personally experienced flooding in my own basement, and I know drainage is an issue on the street. To the point where we had the town come out, I'd say 5 years ago, to inspect the amount of storm drainage on the street, and they concluded that there was not enough storm drainages on the street. So I don't know, where we stand with the town on that point, but I was told about 5 years ago that we were on a list, and that's something that they're looking into. They acknowledge that there was an issue with storm drainage on our street. So I'm hoping this is something that, that can be further looked into and considered when, or at least, looking at this proposal.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard in this application? If you're joining us by phone again, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Any member of the public wish to be heard in this application? 131 Sasko Hill Road. Not hearing anyone else, so I'll close the public comment portion. Counselor, rebuttal.
Again, for the record, Kevin Crusade, 3 Lafayette Street, Milford. This is Residence Zone A, which requires 9,375 square feet for a lot. These 2 proposed lots, one is a little over 10,000 square feet proposed, and the other one's, I think, 11,900 square feet. I would hope that the town engineer gets a report to the board, and I think that should be looked at to make sure that the town engineer is satisfied with the proposed drainage. I don't know what drainage systems exist on the other properties or when those other properties were built, so I'm not aware of the reasons for those, whether we would have a similar drainage issue here. For the record, we filed this application in October of 2024, and we are not responsible for the noticing of the application. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we didn't try to pull a fast one over the holidays and get this on the agenda without people receiving notice of it. So there were some comments about the proposed house and maximizing the footprint and the square footage and the different parameters of the house. But I think more importantly, it's the subdivision is not for the proposed house, and the zoning office will look at the house when it's presented. If it is within 100 feet of a coastal resource as a single family house, there would be another layer of review, which would be the coastal site plan review process that would cut any proposed actual structure or house would come back in front of this board and would be relooked at by engineering and your other agencies. I did a quick look on the GIS. It looks like it's at least 180 plus feet from the creek. And those are my comments. I don't know if my client would like to address some of the comments.
Now I hear everybody's concerns and Grant Panarisi, 749 Stilson Road, Fairfield. I hear everyone's concerns. And for those of you who live in the area of Sasko Hill, I'm really sorry. When my wife and I started out on this, we weren't intending to be developers. We were intending on buying a property that we were going to take and subdivide. Unfortunately, when we went to close on this property, we discovered that there's heavy termite damage. The house is in heavy disrepair, and the amount of work it needs to take it and make it livable, it's just not worth investing in. When Kate sold it to us, and I tell you, it's kind of hard, Enrico, I know you could hear this, but it's kind of hard when your wife sold this house and she lists this house.
Let's not get,
No, it's not going, Chairman, it's not going to get personal.
Okay.
But I feel like when I read the comments from my fellow neighbors over here, I feel like they vilified me in such a way where it hurts me. You know, we're a multi-generational family in this town. My wife's grandfather built the house that we currently live in. He worked in this town. My father-in-law worked in this town for the Parks Department. My kids have been raised in this town, and to get treated like such an outsider by the community in Southport, it's a little rough. In the listing, once in a lifetime opportunity to live the dream on Fairfield County's most coveted street or subdivide oversized park-like property to create two 4,000 square foot structures. This is the listing that Kate Cacciatore put out that we bought. Subdivide a property and put two 4,000 square foot homes. Adam, I don't know why you're upset at me.
Rebecca, I know, I understand that this is very tight, but just
It's very,
direct comments to us, please.
Chairman, it's very personal. I don't know why the community's upset with me. They should be upset with the real estate agent who put this out and sold it.
Understood.
Can I ask a question?
Braun, then Randolph.
Is Mr. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce your name, but is there a possibility of saving that one tree that's at the corner of Tide Mill Terrace and like the driveway for the second house in on Tide Mill Terrace? It's a very tall tree right there. Like, are they all going to be cut down? I heard a couple would, but I don't know which ones. I think that's a big concern because not just for the aesthetics, but it seems like a specimen tree, and it also seems like it would absorb a lot of water in the root system.
This is Kevin Crusaden first. I just want to remind the audience that this is for a subdivision application. It's not for approval of the house or the site plan. So there's a lot of different things that could happen to the lot if the subdivision is approved, where a house could be built. So I don't know if we can actually answer that question at this time. It probably depends on a lot of factors.
And another question, we might be farther than 100 feet away from Pine Creek, and I'm assuming I don't know if Pine Creek is tidally influenced or inland wetland. Either way, it would get some kind of review. Either if it was inland wetlands, like fresh water, then it would be conservation saying, you know, they do or don't have jurisdiction, or if it's tidally, we would have coastal site review. But if it's that far away, I couldn't tell. But if it's well over 100 feet, then you're correct. We'll probably just have a memo from conservation saying it's beyond 100 feet, unless there's wetlands near it.
Will I get a chance to respond since there was a personal response to his allegations as the owner? And instead of keeping it to
Sir, no, I'm
okay.
sorry.
So you can attack my wife. You can attack your.
Sir, this is not public comment. It's rebuttal time. It's the applicant's time. Commissioner Randolph.
Mr. Panarisi, I appreciate your earnestness and communicating that you're a proud citizen of the town, and the laws they have intent. And I think one of the concerns that is legitimately raised that would not prohibit us from, that would not prevent us from approving this is the tree canopy. It's a heavily forested area, and I hope that as you proceed with this project, you will keep that into consideration. To replant, we have some pending, we have some proposed text amendments that would specifically require you to do this, but those haven't been considered or passed yet. But as this site is redeveloped and you are within your right to go down to a much smaller lot than you're proposing, you keep in mind the trees in the area, the tree canopy and the nature as you proceed with this project. We're not to make that a requirement of subdivision, as your attorney pointed out. This is just this is for the subdivision. It's not for the lot. But as we go forward, just the intent. We get a lot of applicants who comply with the intent of the law and not necessarily just the strict letter of the law. So I would request that you consider complying with the intent of maintaining the tree canopy in the area and replacing the trees that get cut down in a proportionate manner. So.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Braun?
Yeah, so for Mr. Went, or through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Went, so can we actually get something from conservation, from engineering, and maybe from the tree warden, just saying what the recommendation is for that tree, even if it's not on town property?
Commissioner Braun, I mean, the applicant's position is just, right now we're doing the subdivision and they haven't gotten to the point of doing the house itself. So,
but we have no input into the house. It's as of right. Once we grant the subdivision, the map is filed and then it can get built. It doesn't go by us again, I don't think. Right?
Correct. You have a memo already in the wetlands. If you don't, I'll repost it or resend it, but there is a memo or an email from conservation saying there's no wetlands.
Oh, you know what? I'd only pulled it down from.
That's okay. I'm not, we have the conservation memo. We will circle back on engineering. To the extent there's any impact on town trees, we'll get a report from the tree warden. As I said before, the tree warden is not going to opine about a tree on private property.
Okay.
Final questions? Thank you. All set.
Thank you. I just have a question. The town engineer does supply a report. Can you keep the hearing open to respond to?
I mean, and normally in this case, the presentation has been, the hearing's done. We are allowed to go out to our own staff, staff and agencies to get final kind of reports and guidance. It's made a part of the public record. If there's a major issue, I would reach out. We can, but I don't. Our normal course is we get the recommendations or thoughts from our town engineer, for example. We consider it an executive session. Our session for the vote. If, for example, they said this is a major problem for X, Y, and Z, then we can have some further discussions. But we normally don't. We just get the report from the engineer and we consider it in our vote.
Yeah, thank you. I think the attorney raises a good question. I would have liked to see the engineering comments tonight versus when we're in executive session, when the public can no longer comment. So hopefully in the coming, meetings, and we'll be able to get it in advance. So we don't have to wait. That's just good practice. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll close the hearing on this application. Should I be calling all the next three together? Okay. So I'll call the next three items together, 430 and 452 Stilson Road. Zone change application of Shapiro Commons LLC to establish a design residence district on land presently zoned Residence A. Zoning regulation amendment application of Shapiro Commons LLC to amend section 10.6 density and minimum lot area, section 10.10 setbacks. Covered in bulk, section 28.6.1 off-street parking. 430 and 452 Wilson Road special permit application of Shapiro Commons LLC. I mean, 19 unit residential development.
Uh,
Good evening, Attorney Rizzo.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Raymond Rizzio. I'm happy to be before you tonight. I have an office at 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I'm here representing Shapiro Commons LLC with regard to 3 items on the agenda. However, I would like to talk to the commission about how they'd like me to proceed. Obviously, certain things are dependent on each other. We have a regulation amendment, which then would lead to a zone change, which would then lead to a special permit. However, without the regulation amendment in place or any modification the commission may do to the requested amendments would end up having the pieces fall apart. And I don't want to be in a position, there's been some concern about having an application, should you adopt, say, of the 5 changes, if you adopt 4 of them, then I've got a non-compliant application that's been filed without the opportunity then to go back and redo it or resubmit. So I was thinking it'd be my understanding tonight to take you through the text change, probably continue the special permit and zone change. And if this commission adopts those, I'm gonna be able to go forward. I don't know.
You want to bifurcate?
Yeah, I think I have to. I don't know. I'd hate to be in a position where we go through a whole presentation. The text amendment's pretty straightforward and the commission is going to either see it or not. The other is very complicated, but given there's been some concerns about traffic, there's been some concerns or modifications that we probably have to make to the application anyway.
Well, is it worth withdrawing to the extent that we can, the special permit application? So we're not having like out there. I mean, I just see, it's hard. I mean, I guess I can not call them together and call them separately if that's what you're asking. me to
Yes.
do. I can
And
amend.
then I would
that.
probably continue the,
Do I have a time limit though, issues with?
I
special
don't, or I
permit?
can open it and then, we have.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Went? I understand his point.
No, clearly, the order in which you are going to need to consider the matters are as explained. I mean, the regulation amendment is going to be the first consideration and then the potential zone change and then the special permit. So I would recommend trying to hear it in its entirety so you can see what the potential impact of the proposal of the regulations are. And if that's not successful, if for some reason it's not approved, then obviously the other elements of the application fall with it. Or if it's modified in some degree, then at that point, I think we could pivot and consider what the impact is on the development proposal. But I think from a timing perspective, we're either dealing with all of this or we're dealing with just the regulation amendment. And as I agree, I think the other 2 would have to be withdrawn.
Yeah, I don't, normally we like, when you have a regulation amendment, we like to see what that does. So seeing the special permit.
I'm prepared to do all 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's just half the problem is you have them here and I'm just kind of going with what's here. I mean, I would start with it and see where we go with it.
Correct.
If we get really bogged down with traffic and things like that are really more special permit.
Right.
We can address it, but I mean, certainly go through the zone change and the regulation amendment. And that's gonna bring in what the special permit is. I mean, it's gonna be what we're used to, site plans and engineering reports and traffic and such, landscaping.
Well, we can start and we'll go as far as we can. At some point, the commission gets uncomfortable, we don't go, I'm happy to punt or continue to move along. I just thought I'd bring that up.
That's fine, yeah, I just wasn't expecting that, so I was just trying to think it through.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give you handouts, which is rather than me coming up every time, I got actually.
I'll pass it down.
So Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, we're doing zoning regulation amendment first?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not the chairman.
No, you're not, sorry. There's only one chairman, and then the zone change, and then the special permit?
Yeah, they're all gonna I mean, certainly gonna start with the zone change and the regulation amendments. That's gonna, you're going through the regulation and what does that do? It's gonna kind of bleed into the special permit. So we'll go through the presentation, focusing on the first 2 and getting to the 3rd probably and seeing where we are after the time, I guess.
All right, well, off we go. So one of the big things that has been coming across in town, and this commission knows better than anything, is we have this big gap in what they call, and I think it's in your, I'll take you through your POCD and your draft POCD and the affordability plan, is we have this issue with what they call middling housing, meaning housing that's either large apartment projects, which have been proposed, 830Gs that have been tried to be jammed down your throat, or single family housing. And there's this big gap in town where you don't have, for example, what they call middling cluster housing, or some area where people who have homes, who are aging out, who are or starting, and a couple where both people are working, where they want a single family feel, or they want a townhouse feel, but they don't want everything that goes with a single family home. They don't want to take care of the yard. It's gotten to be a hassle. They don't, they don't worry about snow plowing and shoveling and everything else. And the town has a big gap in that. And it's funny, you've had a slew of apartments, some very successful, some others. And there's been this gap that everybody's gotten away. And frankly, part of that has come out of this 830G, where people go for as many units as they can, or they shrink them. What we're trying to do is come in with the commission, I think, identified in their POCD draft, and with what has been actually coming through previously, is a amendment to your DRD regulations, which will allow this kind of middling housing, which is not going to be 100, 200 units or nothing. You know what I mean? This is, we believe it's something that there's great demand. I know I've done a bunch of 8, 9, 10 unit projects, and they have been very successful. And there's a great demand for that, as people, all the baby boomers are downsizing. They want to stay connected to Fairfield, or they move to Florida and they want a second home here, but they're not ready to just move into an apartment building. So we've come up with some suggestions. Mostly, I think we had Chris Russo from our office did a pre-app with you folks that we thought was pretty well warmly received. So when I talk about this application, I'm just going to talk as regards to, there's no specific application. It's just something we believe that will enable this middle type housing to come before you. So when we looked at this application, one of the big issues were, and you identified your POCD, is how do we increase density, still keep quality? And I think we talked about previously in a pre-app of going back to what was done. I think it was probably back the old DRD regulation, or the original DRD regulations, which is on the top of your packet. So we've identified, you'll see there's a little identifier on the top. And that basically took and says a dwelling for 4 or more families, you would be able to have a 9,375 square feet you needed to have to become eligible for DRD. If you look to the next page 2, 10.4, and then 3,000 square feet per unit, everything over 9,375 square feet. So you had to have a minimum 9,375 square feet. And I believe there was a requirement of at least being an acre. So you had the ability to have this middle type housing where you had 12 units, 16 units, and they were very popular back in the 80s and 90s, and they've kind of gone away. So the density here we have is something that we think, if you look at the next thing is your current POCD. It says, like its neighbors, you'll see them highlighted in purple. Like its neighbors, Fairfield is predominantly made up of homes with 3 or more bedrooms. And we talk about all the statistics that there is a very little quality of smaller type homes, townhouses and things like that. And then it talks about on the next page, housing size by the town, and what your housing looks like with regard to total housing units. And then it talks about a census tract. But when you get to the summary, kind of as to what the POCD was looking for, it says Fairfield is predominantly a residential community. This is on page 18. The housing in the western half of Fairfield is predominantly low density, although there is some significant medium density housing, for example, like Southport Village. The housing in the eastern half of Fairfield is predominantly medium density. And one of the goals were, if you talked about, this is in your current POCD, is expanding housing opportunities for people of all ages, creeds, races, and incomes and disabilities. Diversification of housing accommodations for many individual desires of our population. Residential development on a density and cluster framework compatible with natural environmental limitations and opportunities. And utilization of a design residence district as a transition from commercial use to single family use. That is kind of what we're trying to talk about in a project you'll hear about a little later tonight, is how do you take, what do you do from, as you come off your major collector roads, whether it be the Post Road, be it Black Rock Turnpike, where you have all this commercial. And then do you have single neighborhood families, or do you have more cluster housing up against it? Well, a couple of the more successful ones, for example, one of the more successful ones is like the Oaks, which is off Stilson Road. Same thing in design residence zone. You look at some Southport Village, you look at a lot of these design residence projects, and they are a great entree into your single family residential zones, because it's a cluster. It gives you that residential feel before you get to the single family house. And it also gives you the ability, as you know, once you get above 10 units, you can get affordable housing requirements. If you get 10, you get 1. If you get 11, you get 2. And as you go up. So it's an excellent balance. And as if you look at page 74, it says the town recognizes the obligation to provide affordable housing and should continue to pursue appropriate options to supply affordable housing in all areas of the town. So that's just your current.
Commissioner Harrison had a question.
Yes.
I just have a question, but can you define middle housing? This is how I define it, and I'd like to know what we're going by.
It's
Less expensive than a single family home. So
Correct.
would these be less expensive than a single family home?
Yes, less expensive, smaller, tend to be clustered, and not part of like an apartment building. So it'd be a townhouse or a cluster type home development, which allows you to increase your density, lower your costs. Once again, in a lot of these projects, what's nice about this from a services standpoint, they're all self-contained. In other words, you're not building town roads that the town has to maintain.
The Oaks is quite, I mean, you mentioned the Oaks, that's not attainable for most people. I mean, it's quite.
No. But there's another one off Melody Circle, which is right behind, so Melody Lane, right off Stilson Place. I can show you on the DRD. So they're spotted all around town.
No, okay, no, thank you for that. Then you mentioned the POCD, I think on page 4 in your application, you talk about the draft POCD.
Yes.
It is still a draft.
Correct.
So, I feel like you put a lot of criteria on the draft POCD when it has not been adopted yet by the.
Well, I understand. I think it's.
A lot of weight on that.
Well, I think it's important. I think it certainly seems to have been the direction the town has been leaning. I think there's a lot of thought behind it. I don't think the draft came out of nowhere. And I think it's everything moving in the right direction. So.
You just went over our current.
Yeah, I mean.
POCD. I'm going to take you through your.
Future update does not exist yet. I just want to be clear, because a lot of applicants are signing our draft POCD right now. We have it a few weeks ago.
You're gonna have it a lot, because in the next 4 months before that moratorium goes through, I think you're gonna have a lot of people that want to increase density. And I think this is, well, first of all, one thing about your draft, it does talk about needs. So whether that is not, needs and desires and goals are two different things, but the needs are certainly set out in your draft. And our goal is trying to make some amendments that satisfy those needs. So if you take your current affordable housing plan, we talk about, first thing you talk about, and this is your affordable housing plan, review and amend the design resident district. This is to increase its ability to provide housing options, increase the number of affordable housing units, enable smaller housing developments where appropriate, and increase housing options overall. That's important. Goal is to produce 100 new units with 20 affordable over a 5-year period. So what it is, it becomes these smaller projects that are controlled growth. In 1988, they talked about the modification of the DRD zone. And what happened to the DRD zone, we ended up going to the all or nothing. We lost our middle size housing, where people just said, well, the density is so small, the costs are so large, the requirements are we may as well go and get as many units as we can and deal with the 30% affordable. And I think that's kind of what you've been having presented for you. And I think the affordable housing plan says, hey, if we loosen up these DRD regs, we'll be able to provide more housing options for our people, and also bring in the affordable housing options, which I think is important. So this is in your current affordable housing plan. Now, if you look at the second page, they talked about possible options for design district, residence district. It says increase the maximum density limitations in some or all areas. I'm going to give you a requirement where this commission can look at it and say, geez, does this work in all these different districts? And I'll take you through that. So it talks about increasing the maximum density limits so that this would allow the DRDs to have some bonuses that will have it allow them to increase the density, but at a situation where the commission would have to be comfortable. Because remember, the good thing about the DRDs is you don't lose control by adopting any of these amendments because you have a very high hurdle to qualify for a zone change, of which this board, the two areas where you have your most maximum amount of discretion is your text amendments and your zone changes. Zone change basically being treated as a text amendment. You're changing your zoning map. So the commission, just because you say a DRD will allow increased density, unless the commission identifies or an applicant identifies the property that's appropriate for it, you have the ability to turn that down. I'm getting close to actually making my presentation, but I'm just setting forth where we are and why these work. It says revisit other DRD provisions, eliminating the limitation of no less than 4 units in one building, modifying some building coverage and some building floor area limitations. So that's where we are. Now you talked about, and I'll take you just through this quickly, your draft POCD. So you talk about your housing stock. 85% of the housing is single unit detached homes. 11% are in small multifamily buildings that have between 2 and 9 units. The missing middle housing typologies have gained national attention as communities look to encourage more multifamily housing that can better blend with single family neighborhoods. And it also works very well as a transition project, transition development into your single families off your commercial areas. As you see, and it says the draft, these trends underscore the growing need for more diverse housing stock and Fairfield to accommodate the evolving demographics. Talks once again about the housing stock and the comparisons of where we're oversupplied and that the town is with a shortage of smaller units and an oversupply of larger units. The result is that single people and non-family couples likely unable to find smaller housing that meets their needs, especially as what's gone on in Fairfield in this market where the housing prices are just pricing young families, people who want to downsize basically right out of town. The undersupply of smaller homes, and because of that undersupply of smaller homes, it's driving your market crazy. The undersupply of smaller homes is likely to have two effects. First, smaller households are likely paying more for housing than need be. And second, it likely increases housing costs for mid-sized households as they may have more competition for mid-sized homes. That's clearly what has been done right through. And we see today even more evident than possible where you see the housing prices, the housing stock, because it's so limited, has just driven the prices through the roof. Based on this analysis, likely that the production of smaller units will not only help make housing more affordable for singles and couples, but also for mid-sized families who have less competition for the housing that meets their needs. We talk about the baby boomer aging population. I've already talked about it. I know this is your draft, but this is kind of addressing these needs that have been identified in town. If you take to the next page, which is 17, it talks about the missing middle housing. There's been a growing awareness, not only multifamily housing needs to happen in larger condo or apartment buildings, but it's this missing middle housing, which includes a range of buildings for multiple units that are compatible in scale and form with detached single family homes. And you show Commissioner Harrison, if you want to look on page 17, it kind of identifies the type of housing that they consider middle housing. We talk about reducing the parking requirements. Couple things with our parking requirements, I'm going to address those tonight, is when you talk about parking of 2.5, the parking requirements are 2.5 for 5 to 10 families, and then you have a visitor parking on a per unit basis. We end up with a lot of excessive parking in our design resident in our multifamily units. And for some reason, and this is where it's not addressing townhouses, and I'll talk about this in our application. So if you have a single family home and you have a driveway, and you can put 2 cars in your driveway, and you can put 2 cars in your 2-car garage. When you get to a design residence zone, you can't, if you have a 2-car garage, the parking spaces, which are typically your visitor parking spaces, don't count. So we would like to address that, modify that for you so that in effect, you basically have, if you have a driveway that's compliant, and you can fit your spaces, you end up with 4 parking spaces per unit. Keep going. If you get to page 29, it says walkable multifamily residential mixed-use develops can create a cohesive, distinct district that enhances the town's tax base. Mostly because these DRDs are located off your collector roads. And then talked about reducing the parking requirements for unnecessary burning construction for new residential units. We crowd 2 spaces per unit and then a quarter space per visitors. We actually are going to suggest a little bit more than that. Then it talks about plan consistency, and that's to revise the minimum lot size and density, and it'll give you the opportunity for different design choices. And if you go to the last page, the design resident district talks about increase the maximum density, reviewing lot coverage, building coverage, and floor limitations, and identify the extent which affordable housing plan would help produce more meaningful increases in affordable housing. Last thing I'm going to take you through, and then we're going to go through the regs and tell you what the changes, and I think you'll see able to go back and forth, is the Black Rock Turnpike Safety Study. And it talks about, like on Stilson Road, where we have issues with capacity, cars getting out onto Stilson Road and the backups on Stilson Road. One of the hypothetically, in a couple applications from now, you'll hear about an application on Stilson Road where, because we have the ability to do cluster housing, we have the ability to make road improvements, which will increase the queuing line for cars going onto or coming northbound on Stilson Road. So when you have these middle projects, you have the ability to also make off-site improvements that will help with safety and traffic, and also help with the ability and the walkability of the town. Now, I hand it to you for, which you can see, which is you all should have a copy of our requirements of, I think you all have the suggested changes that we'd like to make. In a second, I'm going to take you through that. And then I'll explain to you why we think it works. So the text amendment starts off with density. Density seems to be an issue that allows these design residence districts to grow. And the idea that we presented at a pre-app was that we go back to the old regulation, which is 9,375 square feet, and then a minimum acreage size as you go. So if you look at what we presented, section 10.6, basically will say that there is each lot shall have a minimum of 30 acres, but if you in AAA. But if you go to the density and minimum lot area, we open up with the maximum allowable dwelling unit and density shall be 1 dwelling unit for the first 9,375 square feet of lot area, and an additional dwelling unit per each additional 3,000 square feet of lot area. That is basically word for word what the regulation was that had been changed. And we'd like to go back to that. Now, the commission has the right to accept it in all zones or whichever zones they deem fit. But clearly, we think in this issue, it basically would bring up a maximum of 12 units per acre if you add it up. In other words, you could take 43,560 square feet and minus 9,375 square feet, you end up with basically a maximum of 12 units per acre. The other thing we talked about on section 10.6 is in developments, we talk about, if you go to the next page, you'll see it highlight.
Just to be clear though, when in 10.6.1 going down, you're recommending getting rid of the portion that's lined out.
Correct. Everything that's lined out would come out. You would be bound by the first. You would have the ability to apply. Once again, keep in mind, you're only giving you the ability to apply for a zone change, and this sets the maximum amount of units, where this commission has, if it feels like it's not the appropriate place for it, they have the right to not approve the zone change.
How many parcels are there that would qualify for this?
Well, you
like AAA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
So it'd be hard to say. Keep in mind when you ask that kind of question, there's always the ability of assembling property. So to give you an honest answer is I can't tell you.
Okay. Thank you. That's
But for like AAA? If, would it?
It had to
you
be
think you think it would go to 30 acres, you could get 30 times 12 essentially?
potentially. That's what I'm saying. The commission has the right to has the right to take a look at each one of these zones and see where they think the density is important.
But the important part is crossing out what you're crossing out to get what
Correct.
you want up top, which was what we previously had. in our
Right, which is basically the staggered increase in the amount of development per acre.
Thank you.
All right, if you go to setbacks, we talk about in developments, and I've got, let me just put a setback situation here for you. So existing setback requirements, and I just put them out for each of the zones. And it basically, we're just looking to add where the design residence district abuts a commercial district. That it would be the same as a as what it currently is in proposing a DRD abutting a design business district. So if you're next to a design business district, the DRD, as you can see currently, there's a lot of larger setbacks, but currently in a design business district, they can go down to 0 or 10 feet. What this would basically do is make the proposal would make it the same as the design business district. So that if you were next to a design residence district, it'd be 30 feet. If you were next to a design, the side that's next to a design business district could be 10 feet. So believe it or not, in a design business district, there's either, and it's a weird reg because it's 0 or 10, make your choice. So if you have DBD against DBD, you can straddle the property line. However, if you're next to a design residence district, there's a minimum of 30 feet. So what this would be is saying if it was the same as the design business district, a DRD could be within 10 feet of a design residence, of a design business district. So the design business would be at 10 feet, 30 feet. So that's the way that would work. It's the ability to basically keep your setback smaller against the commercial, but providing basically a 30-foot setback minimum against other residential properties. Does that make sense?
For any residential property? or
Whenever the DRD abuts a residential district, it's a minimum of 30 feet. But if it's against a design business district, it could be 10 feet. Now keep in mind the design business district can go down to 0. Does that make, so what we're trying to say is, look, we just want the ability where we prefer in most instances to keep our 30-foot setbacks against the abutting residential districts, but move closer to the design business district, meaning where the commercial property is.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to clarify.
Go ahead.
So just I should know this, but to clarify, so the setback is face of the building?
Setback can be the face of the building in design business district unless it abuts
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. So the setback, the 30-foot setback is the face of the building from the property line, is that correct?
a wall of a side property line abutting a residential has to be at least 30 feet away.
Thank you.
A residential district. But it can go, if it's against a commercial district, it can be as small as
No, I
10.
understand. I was just trying to clarify the definition of a setback.
Yeah.
Clarify that.
And keep in mind, we're talking about that as a side setback.
I understand. Thanks.
The front, nothing changes with regard to any other setback.
It's not paved, it's not a paving.
No,
So
it,
driveway can be in that.
correct. But then again, remember, what you also have is you have landscape buffer requirements and everything else that go along. We're not changing any of that. So.
Hold on, Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the 30 feet on the residential wouldn't matter if it was side, rear, or anywhere, it would be 30
Correct.
feet. And if it's near business, it would be 10 feet,
Go down to
side,
10.
rear, or anywhere. Got it, thanks.
And that's all that last portion says. Now in 10.2, one of the things that was talked about in the POCD, your current and your draft, was talking about increasing your coverages. Currently, you're at, and it didn't
10.12.
coverage in bulk,
10.12.
10.12. Did I say that? I'm sorry.
I know the worst.
10.12, we have a couple changes we'd like to make, and I'm gonna give you and when you take a look at this when you take a look at these coverages, I think you'll understand why. Because one thing, it's hard to increase density and not increase coverages, because then all you're doing is making smaller units.
I'll send it down.
Oh, sure.
In the previous one. We didn't get the previous one.
It's a work of art. Let me hit that. Mr. Green, I don't know about Mr. Green. Mr. Green. Mr. Green. So here's the funny issue with regard to and why we want to change the coverage in the bulk. You can't increase your in density if that's some of the goals of your plan of conservation or your draft conservation, plan of conservation, and get this middling housing unless you really increase the coverage, because then all you're doing is you're adding units and you're not increasing the coverage, so you're making, all you're doing is making smaller units. And when you look at the size that I'm talking about, you're not talking about McMansions. So what we wanted to do is attached garages below the living area shall be exempted from the calculation of total floor area. So that a garage, a two-car garage, typically in townhouses, you have garage, you'll have a small area underneath in a townhouse where you'll have a walk-up garages underneath and then 2 floors above the living. And when you look at what this really means in an amount of square footage, when you talk about coverage in bulk, it's very little. So what we did was we looked at what you currently have in the existing DRD regulations. We're asking that you could increase the proposed DRD regulations, the lot coverage from 20 to 30%, and this is per acre, and the total floor area ratio from 50 to 60%. So under your existing regulations, if you've got an acre of land, you can cover 8,000 square feet of it, 8,700 square feet of it. If you have an acre of land, under current regulations, you can build 21,780 square feet. Under what we're proposing, if you have 30%, that allows you to have coverage of 13,000 square feet, 13,068 square feet, and under the floor area of 26,136 square feet. What does that mean when I'm looking at what's going to be built there? So if you take your 12 units per acre, which we talked about in our proposing, under current zoning DRD regulations, you're only allowed to build a first floor, a lot coverage of 726 square feet with an existing floor area ratio of 1,800 square feet being the maximum size of your unit. Now, the problem is, that imagine now if you had to take out your 400 square feet for the garage. Typical garage is 20 by 20, 18 by 22, call it 400 square feet. Your maximum size of your unit would be 1,400 square feet. Doesn't really get you to that middling type housing that we're looking for. If you had to do it.
What are you looking for square foot?
Well, basically what happens is if you go to 60%, you can have a maximum living area, not including a garage, of 22,178 square feet. Gives you a nice size 2 or 3 bedroom. That's what it gives you. 2,170 square feet gives you a nice size living and dining area. It probably gives you 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. And if you can incorporate a garage without adding that square footage in. Typically 1 bedrooms tend to be a standard 1 bedroom. Even in apartment buildings now are 750 to 900 square feet. Your 2 bedrooms are 1,200 to 1,800 square feet are large.
You think retirees need 2 to 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, I think they like to have one maybe as an office. They like to have, you got to remember, you're downsizing from a house. You have children visiting. I mean, I have kids in 3 different time zones, and when they come in, they could use 3 bedrooms. People are moving out of a 1 acre home or a 4 bedroom house. They're not necessarily looking to downsize to an apartment building. You remember, you lose storage, you know, you talk about closet space, you talk about all sorts of things. 2,170 square feet of living space, I would consider that middling housing that you're looking for, where you could comfortably fit 3 bedrooms, you can comfortably fit a living dining area, and then you would still be able to accommodate a garage. So these are not large homes. And we believe that's what, but when you either include the 400 square feet deduction, you see how small the units get. And I think that's not what this commission is looking for. I think it's my understanding, at least satisfying this middling housing. You're looking for units that can be somewhere in that 2,000 to 2,500 square foot area that give people a comfortable, either a large 2-bedroom or a smaller 3-bedroom home. That's not big. Last but not least, if we go to the last page, we talk about parking. And that is a big issue. And I can tell you, I've been involved with a couple of these larger housing projects, even like on what's called the Anchorage, which has 90 units on Umpqua. And that has about 1 3/4 units per space for 90 units. And I can tell you the garage is maybe 70% full all the time. Now, what we would currently require would be 2.5 for each family. And then you'd also have a requirement of visitor parking. So what we would like to do is reduce it basically. So in other words, properties of 11 or more units would currently require 3 for each family. So now you have smaller units. It's kind of almost inverse, which is interesting. Typically, the more density you have, the less bedrooms you have, the less people you have in them. And our parking requirements are almost inverted. So you can have an 8-bedroom house, or you can have a big house, you still only need 2 parking spaces. So what we're saying is once you get above 5 units, we think 2.5 is more than enough. And then it would also still, we did not change, it would give us the ability to have a half a space per unit of visitor parking. And one thing we were asking to be relief from is the requirement of the number of parking spaces that the spaces in front of a unit, if they're adequate parking size, be considered. And the reason being is if you have a driveway, that's exclusive, and you have a 2-car garage, and you have the ability to park 2 cars in front of it, any way you cut it, unless you turn your garage, which would no longer be a garage. Remember, keeping this in mind, in these zones, you can't convert that garage to living area. So you end up with basically the ability to park 4 cars in front of the unit, which is more than anybody needs. And we're not asking to get rid of the half unit of surface parking designated as visitor parking.
So it would be the 2.5
plus a half.
plus a half.
Plus a
or
half.
2
Yeah.
plus that.
And if you've been through, I guess what's you guys have been down the road, you've been to court over these things. When you look at the affordable housing regulations, which are where they test reasonableness of parking, typically it's 1.25 to 1.5 per unit. And courts have determined that that's adequate. And we're not getting near that. We're telling you 2.5 works. Please, I think you should consider those parking spaces in front and still keep the visitor parking. So there'll be more than adequate parking. So for example, a project like the one that could be talked about later could have 18 townhouses. The 18 townhouses have 2-car garages. There's 2-car parking in front of it. You're talking about 72 parking spaces. And then you still have to provide half a unit per visitor space. So you could end up with 80 parking spaces for 18 units. I can guarantee you, no one's going to ever go anywhere near that. And I know that from having dealt with large apartment buildings, managed and owned apartment buildings, that typically you don't go anywhere near 3 to 4 spaces per unit. You'll end up, and the goal, part of the goal is to eliminate just having these large parking fields. There's been discussion about it in retail. Some towns have actually even eliminated their parking regulations. They go by whatever the town feels appropriate, because I'm sure you've all driven through areas where there's commercial properties and all you have is a parking field of asphalt. And so we think all of these changes are consistent with your recognized needs in town to provide middling housing, to increase density, to increase bulk and lot coverages very conservatively, and hopefully give you this middle housing, which will help control that, provide an affordable, not necessarily affordable 8-30G standards, but a more affordable option for people than just the single family homes, which seems to be the current ability, the current kind of only offering, it's 80% of the town. And we would say more than 20% of the people in this town, I would think, would like to live in, have at least available this middling, this affordable option that basically is an excellent option between your large houses or your single family houses that require managing roofs, cutting lawns, snow, taking care of snow. All these options that either a young couple, who's both people are working, or an older couple would like to rid themselves of.
Define affordable. I mean, obviously lowercase a, but like how? It's your words. I'm just curious what.
Well, I'm using your words too. Middling housing in itself will be more affordable. First of all, it'll be more affordable to build. It'll allow the developer to build, keep their costs down. So it'll be more affordable to build than single family housing, where you have, which you've seen in town, just the cost going up like crazy because there's no middle option here.
No, I understand that, and I'm just curious. What...
Yeah. Well, typically, what'll happen is your highest, most expensive home to build is a single family detached home. Clearly, it's the most expensive structure you can build. And it goes back from there to the townhouse construction. And then
we have townhouses
multifamily apartment
that are beautiful, but they're over $1 million. I
Well,
would call that attainable.
No, but it also could service a need for somebody who wants to is willing to pay the price, but doesn't want any of the upkeep that goes with a single family home. There's plenty of, I think there's a lot of townhouses in town. Unfortunately, they're of the older nature that have kept and gotta remember some of the older apartments or some of the older smaller condo projects haven't been able to be, because they have a very small condominium association, they haven't been able to, it's hard for them to get the ability to make the improvements that they need, because you could have over 20 years when you got to replace a roof, now you're replacing 20 of them. But I think it's basically cost. Nobody's going to build a single family house if they can't make money. The single family house that's built is going to be the most expensive to maintain and the most expensive to build, and therefore get the highest price. The townhouses will be more affordable.
Thank you.
Commissioner Siebert.
Back to.
Oh, Siebert, then Levy.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So back to, I get the argument about trying to find townhomes, condominiums that are affordable for both younger families and the larger percentage of people like me that have a single family home looking to retire and looking for something more affordable within Fairfield versus having to go to Branford or wherever. Okay. So I guess my question is, you may not have the answer to this question, but what is the house that I sell for $650,000 and try to buy a place in this development going to cost me $400,000?
It's hard to determine that. I mean, I
guess your point is this: a single family house on this lot is likely to cost more than a unit on this property.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get.
Obviously, the collective may be higher, I guess, but the unit itself is less than
Right.
a single family.
I guess you put it this way, if you had your $650,000 house and you put two townhouses on it, they may be worth more than 650,000. But the two townhouses will be, each townhouse will be worth, will be less than $650,000. So and you can only do that by increasing density. Because you can see that you're taking the same land and you're providing a more affordable option.
Got it.
I'm not an economist, but I've done a lot of real estate over 40 years, and that's what I've seen.
Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, you're basically proposing a density to promote this middle housing of about 12 units per acre. And that would be across the board. And I don't know if there have been any studies, or if there's a magic number, whether 10 or 14 achieves that goal of, making it affordable for the builder to build it and affordable for the buyer. Just wondering, by way of comparison, what the density, the projects on Reef Road, which you were involved with, what was the density on those townhouses per acre? The ones up from Oldfield.
Those are all 9 units. Now, I think if you got to remember, here's a difference. They weren't design residence districts. I think they were in design commercial districts, and they got waivers of the requirement to be 50% residential and 50% commercial, allow residential on the first floor. So they didn't have any bulk requirements that go in a design residence district. That being the difference. That makes sense. So if you're in a design residence district, you don't have the same bulk issues. So in this instance, you have, I think, if I can remember, I think the units are, I think the unit, I'd have to look it up. I think the sites were over an acre. I'm pretty sure they were over an acre. So I would think they're probably close. I can get that information for you.
I think he just wants, for illustrative purposes, that's what he's probably looking for.
Yeah, correct.
But what kind of density are you looking at? Is basically, yes. I can get that information for you. In fact, I can get that information pretty quickly as I continue to talk, if somebody else will look it up.
Thank you.
Very good.
It's nice having a partner in the crowd. Unless Mr. Green wants to help.
They're roughly about an acre each.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And keep in mind, though, the difference between those units, and there's where you talk about Commissioner Harrison brings up Commissioner Harrison's point. I'm glad you brought this up, Mr. Lee. So you're 9 units to the acre, but those units are all about 3,000 square feet. So why they end up in the $1 million range versus units that are going to be 2,100 square feet plus, a 400 square foot garage possibly. So that is where you see the difference by controlling the square footage. Am I clear? Is that helpful? So yeah, if you build a 3,000 square foot house, for example, the Oaks, those units are 2,700 to 3,000 square feet. They're going to go for $1 million. That's what it goes for in town. But if it's going to be 2,100 square feet of living space, now you're talking about bringing your numbers down, making it, I think, affordable in Fairfield County. Affordable, is a very loose term. Put it this way, more affordable than the larger homes.
Would you say that the inventory of 2,100 square foot townhomes in Fairfield are, limited? Like, for example, Strathmore. I mean, there's limited inventory.
Yeah, I will tell you, there is 100% limited new inventory. I think what you're seeing in town, and staff probably can talk about that. We do a lot of applications in town. We're seeing smaller, larger, like you saw on Oldfield, going for $1 million, 3,000 square feet, big units, Reef Road, Southport Village, all units 2,500 to over 3,000 square feet. Now you have not, I can't remember the last time, and I've done a lot of zoning that I've seen people building 2,200 to 2,400 square foot townhouses. I haven't seen it, and we do zoning in almost every town in the western part of Fairfield County. So there is definitely there wasn't back in the 80s and 90s. We can go to all sorts of, but the first unit I lived in on School Street was, 1,800 square foot townhouse. No one's built those unless they're 830G. That's the only place you'll see them where they really ram in the density to be able to make up for the affordable.
It's Russo, right?
Mr. Rizzio, I hope.
Rizzio.
He hasn't retired me yet. He's trying.
Thank you very much for your thorough evaluation of this. I have some kind of specific questions. So in 10.6.
Sure.
Is there any reason you've got a minimum lot of specified in each one of the different zones? I mean, I guess my first question was you're setting this up for your specific project, but you've gone through the extra effort, which is commendable, to go through each one of the different maximum allowable areas.
Thank you. Not you, just a little noise in the crowd.
Oh,
You're all set.
maximal allowable areas for each one of the different zones. Is there any reason you kept the minimum in there, the minimum acreage?
We wanted it to reflect the old regulation.
Right, but you've struck the maximum allowable dwelling unit density. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just asking, since you're making the change and correcting.
It seemed to me.
Updating the ordinance, it seems as if.
That the commission, I guess the thinking being. Our thinking being that the commission would still like to have some limitations, that there's a relative size.
Right.
And that should be reflective of, which you definitely wouldn't want 12 units on 1 acre in a AAA zone, or 3 or whatever, 2-3 acres. So I think, look, the commission has the ability to limit even which one of these this could apply to.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I think that it's laudable that you went through each one of the different zones and changed it for all of them.
Right.
I would perhaps like to see it go further and change the minimum lot size of 30 acres in there.
Well, the minimum lots were what we currently had, right?
Correct.
So your thought was just more
dealing with the
less
density.
changes are the better, so to speak.
Okay,
correct.
That's a clear explanation.
Right.
Again, my questions are very specific. You mentioned, so there's, in my viewpoint, there's a need for affordable housing. I lived in the town since '95. I've lived in 3 different housing types: a starter, a medium, and a larger house. And we're empty nesters in a large house, which we like staying in, but there aren't any alternatives in town.
No.
As was pointed out. One of the issues though in town, and we hear the word character thrown around, a lot of us thrown around it earlier. And I think that speaks to a couple of things. One is landscaping, trees. We started out I always say we think of ourselves as a New England town, but we are a lot more like New Jersey in a lot of ways, or Long Island. We've got way too much asphalt. And some of your suggestions here address that parking coverage. But the one thing that yours is silent to, and I've been working on this with another commissioner, the Forestry Commission and the tree warden, is looking at enhancing our landscape plans. Now, I would ask that as part of this, that you look at screening and buffers. And West Hartford, 177.34. I'll write that down.
Well, I was going to tell you one of the things, and I hope I don't mean to interrupt.
Please.
So you then have your special permit standards, which require buffering, they require landscape, and then all those plans subject to your approval. Now, if it be part of a DRD, that there be a minimum so that you don't have to worry about that and saying, well, wait a second, we match up all the regs. But at a minimum, if you're going to get this increase in density, we'd like to see a nice, strong landscape buffer as a requirement in a design residence district above what you would normally see in a residential area.
We're totally aligned. And it'd be good to, I'm working with another commissioner, the Forest Commission, tree warden, try to improve those standards. And since you're doing all this work right now, and what you're saying is aligned with, I think a lot of the concerns that we hear every meeting is trees. You're cutting trees down. So if you could include a screening, more specific screening requirements and very, I'll just say, thorough screening requirements, I think that would ease a lot of people's concerns, because frankly, the earlier plan we saw, the landscaping was grossly inadequate. I would have provided that feedback. But if we can, since you're changing and doing a thorough job on changing the regulations, if you could address the screening as part of that, that would I think ease my mind, and I know it would address a lot of the
I
concerns.
get that. So what back and forth, I think with the commission, paraphrasing things, would like to see, make sure that they're buffered, that these things, if you're gonna get the increased density and intensity of the use, let's make sure that from
And
the
tree,
rest of the town's enjoyment that we get.
and tree replacement.
Tree replacement. Yeah, I get it.
Because your site has a particularly mature set of trees. that
Mhm.
Look
I
like
got it.
they're gonna be. And it's not addressing quickly. So that.
So just so I understand this. It's not something we want to address by case basis, but it's something you want to see in a regulation to make you eligible to even come before you with your special permit and then pick at it.
I'm speaking for myself, and I know one other commissioner who I've been working with, Commissioner Braun and I have been talking about these sort of requirements. We haven't reached a consensus. We haven't passed the POCD yet, but that's my individual request.
Be mindful, I mean, he's coming with specific regulations.
Yes.
It's hard to add to regulation amendments now, because then it needs to be renoticed. Another kind of hearing on what that's gonna be, so.
I will tell you, the commission, and I can check with staff, has the right to modify my suggestion. Yours, take and add that. You could say, you know, we want that buffer to be as a minimum, if the setback's gonna be 10 feet, we want a buffered landscape in that 10 feet and not a driveway.
I mean, that could be a condition of approval, right?
I think going down that route will be easier than trying to expand the footprint of these regulation amendments.
Part of the problem with that, Commissioner, is, as you've seen it, because every site's so different. And some you don't mind if they're against a commercial piece of property versus protecting residents, or you might want more, all depending on site to site. And I think your special permit, I can pull the regulation out, gives you that ability to review. Landscaping is integral in that, and you have the right to require as much landscaping as you want.
I think I'm better informed about the procedural steps that we have this before us, and I guess for the specific project, I will be asking to address this, and it sounds like Commissioner Noonan's suggestion to address this as separately would be a better approach.
At least in the site plan or the special permit, especially when we can work with them and maybe have an agreement to a condition of approval. Which maybe, can I co-opt your time for a second? I think that kind of brings me what I've been thinking about this whole time, about whether we want to bifurcate things. We certainly can't address the zone change without doing the special permit.
Correct.
So those two definitely need to be.
I have no problem with that, but this is, all the dominoes fall.
No, yeah, and to me, I always find it easier, I think, easier for us and for the public, that if you're gonna have a zoning regulation, to have something that explains what that's gonna be. You know, like your site, your special permit, or if you had some renderings. I mean,
I'll tell you what I
if you're
could
ready to
do.
Go forward with the special permit. I mean, I guess you could easily say to me, Chair, I just want to go forward with the regulation amendments. I'd go forward with it all at this point.
Okay.
That'd be my thought, unless you have, I mean, I think having the public and the commission see what the end result is, if you're ready for that, would be beneficial.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so sorry to co-opt that, Commissioner.
No
Randolph, but I've been
problem.
Thinking about that, stewing on it.
Two other specifics, and they probably fall in the same category since you presented them, but the change in the FAR, basically the class. Your description sounds like it's a change in your definition of FAR. which might be a cleaner way to do it than just exempting porches.
You mean garages?
Garages, yeah, yeah, it's enclosed porches, garages. But right now, the FAR definition is, doesn't match other municipalities, other jurisdictions, which just look at usable area. So I think your suggestion is well-founded, just giving you feedback. And then your parking ratios, I think, are conservative to reduce it. I know that discussing it with other commissioners and our discussion of the POCD, I think we're ready to modernize our parking ratios, because it comes up in every meeting we have. But the industry standard is 1.4 right now. That is widely recognized, so.
Yeah, and like I said, and then when you discount currently not being able to count 2 parking spaces in front of a 2-car garage, now you just have, what you basically have, you've wasted impervious out there.
Yeah,
You just, when you reduce that parking, you reduce the ability, and I'm saying reduce it, when you make it more practical and realistic, it gives you the ability to do some of the other things you want, as with regard to landscaping.
Yeah, and just to echo that, the issue, a lot of people they see development as environmentally negative. If you go up, it's less impactful than going out.
Correct.
So reducing the impervious surface by reducing the parking requirements is a step in the right direction for environmental. So the theme to what I'm saying is more trees, less paving.
And the other thing that we talked about, why with the garages, you want to encourage, especially in the Northeast, look, if a guy can get more square footage and use his square footage towards living area and get more money, but not have the garages, it's a balancing act. But if you can get these cars into the garages, I think it's much more attractive. I mean, we're not living in the moderate, climate, and I can tell you it's important.
Thank you. Rizzo? I mean, like I said, this is kind of your presentation. Certainly we can't do the zone change without special permit, because I don't want to separate those two. Because I need to, in order to get the zone change, we want to
Correct.
see if it applies.
Well, can I ask for one thing? Because this is important. Given the certain individuals in the room, maybe it'd be important that I made my presentation. You have the ability to have people, the public, speak as to the amendments. Then I can rebut and then move on to the other application, because otherwise, at least the commission then will actually be able to segregate the issues. So for example, we're dealing with the amendments. The amendments are the key to everything moving forward. And the commissions, I'd like to keep everything focused on the amendments as with regard to this separate application. And I'm assuming the rebuttal will be limited. I mean, the discussion for or against would be limited to not site-specific issues.
I see where you have all three together.
How do you distinguish them all when you're trying to?
Listen, it's not as if these regulation amendments are so complex. They're hitting basic things that, density, lot area, parking and such.
Okay.
Unless you're gonna withdraw the zone change or the special permit, I think going forward makes sense.
Then Chairman, the only thing I'll ask is that I get to reserve the right to rebut any comments with regard to the text amendment.
Of course, I'm taking all three together.
Correct.
And so you'll present all three, comment on all three, you'll rebut on all three.
Okay.
Unless you tell me you're gonna withdraw the zone change or the special permit, I would go forward with that.
I don't think so.
Well, it's the sense I'm getting, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm ready to go. Going to take a minute and get a easel and we'll get some boards up and we go.
Just take a quick one.
Sure.
That's okay. Yeah.
Tree.
Plan. Maybe it's too quick.
Bring up anything that we don't have digitally?
I have my computer.
You'll be able to pull up on the screen.
Yeah, or any, and I wouldn't.
Will always be, like, you know.
Your Graham and Jody.
Yeah.
Your kids. Tree.
You guys.
See you.
I'm like.
Put that ET in the.
If I don't.
You're good. You're good.
You can take mine out though.
But yeah, if you're gonna put a pool in.
Sound view, putting up 46 apartments.
You should have to either replan on your site, like if it's a 2 acre lot, you're just gonna have to plan on site.
We're on the Facebook.
Here,
It's okay. Are you on the Facebook group? So on our group,
Has to be like a license.
I feel like it's, they do it anyways. I like it.
I don't like putting, I
some thoughts and talk to my clients. One thing I think we're gonna have a little,
Back on the record?
1 second.
Yeah, sorry, we're not on yet.
Still check. Yep, we're back on. We will.
hopefully, it's with, make your night a little shorter. I'll give you an early Christmas present. And I think we're
10 minutes slow.
Go ahead.
So, you know what? I think there's gonna be a lot of give and take and stuff, things that are with regard to special permit. I think that what I really would like to do is, I think these amendments are important. I think these amendments kind of stand on their own, irrespective of an application. I think we talked about everything generally and talked about what you guys have seen and addressed in your needs. What I'd really like to do is close my presentation on the reg amendments. The public can then get up and speak. I can withdraw my special permit application. There's work that needs to be done on that to assess some specific needs, maybe with regard to landscaping and traffic, that we come back. If these amendments are proposed, we come back with something that the commission could like. But I think the amendments, stand on their own. I'd like to have them treated on their own. And I can, if we're running up against time constraints, I can withdraw my special permit application and zone change. And we can address those when we know what amendments we're dealing with, and come back with or maybe no amendments, but at least I'll know what we're coming back with. And I don't end up in a situation where I now have got an application before you that's non-compliant with some changes to the amendments you may make.
Okay, and that's fine. I mean, for your applications, if you're gonna withdraw the zone change and the special permit, fine. Because as you said, they stand on their own, they're your applications. As I said, certainly couldn't do the zone change without the special permit.
100%, Chairman. And I don't want to do the zone change on its own, because I think it's important. Look, these amendments, I believe, came out of some very thoughtful discussions, some review of the work that this commission has been putting through in their draft plan of conservation, and looking at some of the goals from the previous plan of conservation.
So we'll do that, and I'll say with this caveat to the public, so everybody's on the same page. I think you would agree with me, because I think you said it. Even if we were hypothetically to adopt the regulations that you proposed, that doesn't mean that we would necessarily apply those regulations to this site. That would be, as you're withdrawing this.
Now there is no site.
Well, no, that's fair, but I mean, there is because it's on the agenda. Let's put it that way. So even if we were to adopt the regulations tonight, and I'm not saying we are, because we hear from the public, we hear from rebuttal, then we wait. But even if we adopt the regulation amendments now, that doesn't mean that when you come back to us with a zone change application to change this 430 and 452 Stilson Road to a design residence district, because of these regulation amendments, we still have in our authority not to do that.
Correct, 100%.
And that obviously would affect the special permit and not
I
going.
think you have the same discretion
Everybody
in the
understand
zone
that?
change.
We're all on the same page there. Okay. So that doesn't mean that whatever we do with the regulation amendments will necessarily mean that the special permit goes forward in this site. It's regulation amendments, zone change, and special permit. We're just doing
100%.
step one. Okay. Everybody understand?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's gonna be withdrawing the other.
He's withdrawing, so I'll put it on the record. Attorney Rizzo, you're gonna be withdrawing item number 2, 430 and 452 Stilson Road, zone change application, and item 4, same address, special permit application.
Commissioner, Chairman, Commission, I respectfully request the Commission accept the withdrawal of our special permit and zone change application.
So items 2 and 4 withdrawn. Item 3 is moving forward. We are done with your presentation, sounds like. Okay.
I'm just reserving the right for rebuttal.
Okay. I will open the hearing to item 3, the zoning regulation amendments. Open to public comments. Any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this application, if you can just come forward, give your name and address. You see Attorney Green. I suspect he is here representing clients, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go forward, or normally attorneys get a preference, or I can certainly see if any member of the public wishes to be heard? How long are you gonna be? Start with that.
Well, I would just like to make a comment, offer a comment for the commission in terms of the procedure tonight. And
Sure.
just briefly, for the record, Joel Green of the offices of Green and Gross. I appear before you this evening on behalf of Stilson LLC. It is the owner of the office building at 427 Stilson Road, directly across the street from property that was the subject of the special permit application that has just been withdrawn. So, let me begin by saying that I am very mindful of the time of this commission and the time of staff. And I understand the landscape that confronts the commission right now and the volume of applications that is crossing the counter at the zoning department. And I recognize that you are like, as my father used to say, you're like the winners of the pie eating contest and your prize is more pie forward. And I get that. So it's a difficult situation. Having said that, there were documents presented this evening, and I understand that many of them were explanatory, but certainly Attorney Russo was good enough to get me a copy of some of the documents, but they're not in the record. And certainly no one at home watching online and no one in this room knows, basically what those documents say. I am familiar myself with the proposed plan of conservation and development, or the draft plan of conservation and development, but the other documents I'm really not. So under any circumstances, the hearing should, in the exercise of, as a matter of fundamental fairness, the hearing should be held open for comment on the text amendment. As soon as Attorney Rizzio started discussing a withdrawal of the application, I said to Attorney Russo that maybe he wants to reconsider that, because I don't want to waste the time of the commission. But I'm going to ask the commission for an opportunity to respond another evening on the text amendment. I can offer some general comments tonight, but on some of the specifics, I'm going to need some time.
The text amendments themselves, the proposed text amendments are in the record.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff was POCD related. I mean, that's public document. I mean,
The draft plan.
it was the draft plan, which is part of it. We have, these are the former regulations, current POCD, current housing plan, draft. I mean, Black Rock Turnpike safety study. I mean,
correct.
I understand your point that, normally things are in the record, but these are also public documents really meant for background, right?
Yeah, but some of those documents are not even, are former documents that aren't even really readily available online or.
Let me ask Attorney Rizzio, as far as keeping it open because of these, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you go down the record, Raymond Rizzio, I think you go down a dangerous road, because every application, you're going to submit something to the record. So that basically says you have to have I may as well tape my presentation, put it on a week in advance. And then, I mean, I haven't given anything that's not available to the public. It's all with regard to the amendments. I don't think that there's any reason to continue this thing on and on, because then on rebuttal, I may bring some information up and then we're going to end up extending. I just don't think there's anything that the public hasn't been able to evaluate. And I don't think there's anything earth shattering that I pulled out of a hat that showed anybody, if they have concerns about density, intensity, parking and all that, it's there. And it's been there since this application was filed. Nothing's really changed. My discussion was all basically limited to the application, and the narrative that has been on record is pretty much exactly what I talked about. I don't think there's any reason to punt this down the road. One of the reasons I tried to do this tonight was to segregate this so that we focused on just what was before you and not
I know, I mean,
hypothetical.
anytime we always have even if it's a new presentation of sorts, we like to get it on the record for people to see things beforehand.
I'm very comfortable. I don't think there's anything that wasn't available to Mr. Green to make his argument.
Green.
To suggest that the public, including my client, has to review every public document and understand every public document. Prepare for this hearing. There are specific documents that were referred to that are not in the record. Certainly, there are folks watching from home and people in this room, they have no idea what these documents are. And Attorney Rizzio may be comfortable with them, but I'm not comfortable with them. I haven't seen some of those documents. Some of those documents are former public documents. They were referred to in the presentation. And under the rules, of fundamental fairness and natural justice that guide procedures of this commission, you can't just start submitting documents and the commission sees them and no one else sees them and expect the public to have a full and fair opportunity to comment.
If I could just make one comment, Chairman.
Let me ask you this. I mean, listen, I'm inclined to somewhat agree with Attorney Green because this is, we've come across this before where something new is presented the day of, you don't have a chance to read it. Hopefully, the idea is that the hearing spills over into another night, so it kind of rectifies itself, so to speak, which isn't happening now. And I know you're gonna say to me, well, you Chair, you're the one who told me to withdraw, and I hadn't really anticipated this, so maybe this is partly my fault as well. I didn't think so, but maybe it is. It's unintended consequence. I don't want to really lose a whole night considering where we are, as you say, with our workload. I really would like to go as far as we can, maybe with the caveat that I'll keep this open to the extent that there needs to be any further comments on the documents themselves. But again, it's background and not just even background and public stuff. I mean, it's, current POCD, draft POCD, things that are pretty on point. I get the former DRD regulations aren't available, but I mean, my thought would be this: go forward with what with what we have. And if we do, and we may keep the public hearing open for public comment, but anything is going to be limited to the new documents that are given to me today. And
another suggestion, frankly, is I don't mind if Attorney Rizzio wants to reinstate his other applications and present on them tonight, because when he started disclosing these documents, I sort of assumed that time that we'd have an opportunity to look at them before the next session on this matter.
No, and you want some time. I mean, listen, we've got,
Chairman, I think you're going down a dangerous road. I think every time this can come up every hearing when somebody puts something that is not just, there's nothing new, there's nothing,
Yeah, but I've been
smoking gun here that comes.
No, I know your point, but even when it's in rebuttal and somebody presents something new, I have to reopen public comment for that new document. I mean, that's not something unusual to us. And anytime that we ask for documents, are they part of the record or they're not part of the record? We always make sure that the public has that time to review them unless it's, I don't know, maybe the POCD or something like that. So like I said, I'm inclined to agree with Attorney Green. And I guess the question, now is kind of back to you is, do you want to reinstate? Just there's now knowing what Attorney Green, it would be nice, to be frank, it would have been nice to have known this sooner, to be honest with you. I would have liked to have known this, I guess, during our recess. So, no, that's fine. I know you tried with Attorney Russo, but even just bringing it up to us would have been helpful. But that's okay. I mean, why don't we take a recess? I know Attorney Russo, it's kind of an awkward position. I'm putting you back in, but this is kind of
I'm not gonna.
Not gonna reinstate.
Nope.
Okay.
Chairman, I
That's
stand.
fine. So why don't we do this then? If there's any member of the public, yourself or anybody that wishes to be heard, I'm gonna go as far as I can tonight. With the caveat that I'm gonna leave the public comment open. Because I suspect that, I'll leave the public comment open to address new documents. So anybody who really wants to talk about the former regulation, the regulation amendments should talk about them tonight. And to the extent that there needs to be, you need to come back a second night to talk about the current POCD, the draft POCD and the other documents and how it affects the regulations. I think that's fine. I can't just I can't just call it quits tonight is my point.
I'm not suggesting that you do, but I also, I would think we should go as far as we can tonight, and I'm sure members of the public want to be heard. But I think that just limiting it to Mr. Rizzio's comments on those documents and not knowing what those documents say specifically, I think is.
Well, I think what we should be going forward on are the regulation amendments. Like that's what's the hearing, you know, and the doc, you know. But I don't want to have, I don't want the same presentation from the public, yourself or anybody, 2 different nights. I mean, we should be talking about the regulation amendments and then to the extent that we can limit it the next time. Otherwise, we should, you know, like I said, I don't want to call it quits tonight.
I don't know that there's going to be, I don't know how much public comment there's going to be tonight or next session.
Well, that's,
I don't intend to be extremely long on just the text amendment. And I can offer you just some general comments tonight, but I think I can be relatively brief at the next session of the public.
well, that's what I'm kind of hoping is go through what I can tonight with the public with what they're available on. New documents. I'm not even gonna say new documents, I'll strike that. The documents presented tonight, put onto the website. And to the extent the public needs to add to their testimony the next session, so be it. And we'll have that opportunity, and I'm hopeful that it will be limited because of just what the topics are. I just, you know, as I said, I'd like to go as far as we can tonight with what we can. I do agree that public is just seeing this stuff and they should have a right to take a look at it and consider it, but I would like to go as far as we can tonight. And I'm not gonna tell anybody here that they can only speak tonight and not the next time. You can pick and choose this tonight or the next time, but if you're available tonight, I would like, you know, the public comment, I'd like to see as far as we can go. And keep the public comment open for next time. Does that make sense? Did I make any sense?
Yeah, just to, most of us here are lawyers. So just to clarify, we're going to receive comments tonight specifically on the text amendments. And then next week, next session, when we meet, the comments will be limited to the documents that were presented that Attorney Green said has not had a chance to review yet.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent they can be. I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not expecting the public, you know, it's not gonna be perfect and that's fine. I'm not gonna stop people from speaking the next time.
No problem. Chairman, I learned 30 years ago, I don't have a vote. Whatever you're comfortable with, we're comfortable.
Thank you. Okay. Attorney Green, you want to?
What I'll do for the moment is I'll defer to the public. I will offer some comments before we leave tonight on my general concerns.
Yeah.
For the public, I'm curious to see what their comments
I
are.
mean, the more I'm thinking about it, the more it's gonna be hard to separate the two. I mean, I'll just go as far as we can tonight, and then we'll have a second hearing. And if anybody wants to speak, at that second session, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be limited to the documents.
Yeah, I don't see this becoming a long.
No, I don't either, and I'm starting to realize that that's a very difficult line to draw, and I'm not gonna enforce it anyways, because I'm not gonna stop the public from speaking, so.
And I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the chair and the commission on this. And I worked for many years with Attorney Rizzio, and I do this with respect to everyone and staff and your time.
So let me be clear. I mean, I would like to go as far as I can with public comment tonight. Any member of the public that wishes to be heard, feel free to come up and speak on the regulation amendments. We will be back. I will leave the public comment open for a second session, time and date to be determined. You can speak tonight, or you can speak that second session, unrestricted. Not even gonna, don't worry about the documents and all that. You can, what I would like for you not to do is speak tonight and then say the exact same thing the second night, please, as far as time economy. That would be the one thing I'd ask, is not to double things up. Yeah, that's what we do. You're right. Attorneys, please. Too many of us. Is anybody unclear? Sir, do you want to come up? Is that way? Okay, come on up. Start. Anybody else unclear with what I've said? I know I've kind of made a few shifts and turns along the way, sir.
Yes, I have a question. If we want to bring up issues like traffic and that type of issue, would that be at the next hearing or?
I suspect that the regulation amendments, when there's an increase in density, is going to, a common and proper response is going to be a question about traffic. So I would think that that would be an appropriate topic. Now, we don't have a special traffic study or report.
I think there is a traffic study.
Well, I know, but that's been, yeah, so you can refer to it if you like, as far as for illustrative purposes, but that technically that application for the special permit has been withdrawn. So we're not gonna be considering it, but as it is, I guess, in line with potentially the regulation amendment, that makes sense to me. Refer to it.
Can we do that tonight or can we?
Good evening. Who do we have? You can just give name and addresses, or is if anybody's an attorney representing.
Two former politicians, no attorneys up here. For the record, my name is Michael Rell, 57 Broad Street, Weathersfield, Connecticut. This is my partner.
Jim Amon, Milford, Connecticut, 515 Popes. It's like the Pope, Highland Road in Milford.
I was gonna say, if you don't mind, sir.
Excuse me for my voice.
No, I know, if you don't mind using that so people can hear you, that would be helpful.
I'm really not a bad guy, though my voice sounds like the Godfather.
No worries.
Jim Amon, spelled A-M-A-N-N, Popes Island Road, 515 Milford, Connecticut, managing partner of IGS.
I'm sorry, what's IGS?
International Government Strategies. We've been around 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, thank you for your service. I believe you are all volunteers up here. I served 6 years on the Historic District Commission of Old Weathersfield, picking paint colors that matched 1675 houses. 10 years as a volunteer councilman and 4 as a mayor, all volunteer unpaid positions. So again, thank you for your service to the town of Fairfield. On behalf of IGS, we do represent the developer. We're lobbyists and government affairs representatives up in Hartford. We work with municipalities, legislators, state agencies, and in particular on this case, housing projects, especially in Fairfield County, have been very difficult to get approved over the last couple decades due to opposition for the affordable housing, dense housing. The buzzword up in Hartford that strikes fear in everybody's ears is 830G. What we're working with the legislature on is workforce housing or mid-level housing that we're seeing here tonight being proposed. It is a concept that is being discussed in Hartford right now in a sense that it's a bridge between affordable housing and housing that's too out of price for families, empty nesters, or folks that are just starting the workforce. We're working on legislation that is very similar to what is being proposed tonight. As we work that forward, hopefully we can get common ground between the municipalities, constituent or residents and developers by doing such building of consensus.
If I can add, the majority leader.
You don't mind, sir, just use your mic.
The majority leader, Rojas, is kind of the guru in charge of all the new housing coming forward for the state of Connecticut. Being someone older than Michael, I've been around since 1981 as an alderman, volunteer. So I do thank you for your service too. Became the Speaker of the House, even though I can't speak tonight. But in reality, the 8-30G has been a problem for all of us in this state. Certainly in my town of Milford, I've dealt with it as an alderman back in the 80s. Scattered housing, affordable housing, you name it. We believe that workforce housing is a very positive thing in today's economy. Certainly with firefighters, police officers, teachers, young couples, trying to find a home anywhere in Connecticut is difficult. Fairfield County is even more difficult. But I think we need to encourage our young people as well as people that want to downsize like myself to stay in their communities or bring in those folks from out of town that are starting out to be part of your community and grow. We believe this is in good faith with the legislator up in Hartford, which right now we believe is going to be a strong bipartisan support of this legislation. So you're ahead of the curve here in Fairfield County and Fairfield if you do this. And anything we can add to help you answer questions as we go through the session, which starts in a couple of weeks, we'd be happy to talk to you at any time. So if there's any questions, we'd love to answer them.
We're also, normally for public comment, we try to avoid it, so I see Commissioner Levy's gonna make a flyer. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Levy.
Even though we don't generally ask questions, calling in from Manitoba, there varies from municipality and so forth around the state, but has your group come up with any consensus as to workforce housing, as to what is that balance of either units per acre or density to accomplish affordability as a goal, but not increase the density to a point where it's 830G type?
If I can answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner, you know, we're just starting a session in 2 weeks. We've been discussing this, Mr. Shapiro, a lot of the members of the Housing Committee and leadership on both sides of the aisle of what we'd like to see as legislation. But there's nothing concrete at this particular time. I'm assuming, and I shouldn't assume, but I feel confident there will be a bill by the end of session that will be a workforce housing bill, or basically what's been discussed here tonight. But I don't have any other detail besides us proposing the legislation at this time, which is going to be
Thank
coming
you.
from Mr. Shapiro, our firm, and others that have been involved in this issue.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sir, yeah, it's first come, first serve, so if you can just.
Thomas Braun. I live at 200 Lakeside Drive in Fairfield. In my opinion, it's Thomas Braun, 200 Lakeside Drive in Fairfield. In my opinion, these types of zoning changes should be part of the next POCD, as I guess that's what you call it. Because there are far-reaching changes here, and we don't really appreciate it. Every comma, every but, every and, every or could have significant changes that we don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if a real estate attorney has gone through this line by line and told us what the effect of every little thing. Even tonight, you were talking about parking. 20 minutes talking about 2.5 spaces. Why not 2.4? Why not 2.9? I don't know. We don't know the significance. I think it's just too big a thing to be discussed and pushed and passed in 2 or 3 hours of discussion at a hearing. It should be part of the 2026 Newtown, I guess, zoning. I'm not familiar with the terms, but the zoning plan that they're pushing forward. And it shouldn't be done like this, because you're going to make a straitjacket for what's happening in 26 by putting regulations in now. They're going to have to change again. So I really don't feel this should be done at all at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, come on up. What time is it? Yeah. If I just may for a second, just for the public, as I said, public comment will remain open till the next session. We have a curfew at 10 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock right now, despite what that clock says. It's so we will adhere to it because we've been, especially recently, very busy and extra sessions. So again, if you don't speak tonight, we'll have time next time. We have a 10 o'clock curfew.
This is Ho Yu Tang on 470 Stilson Road. First of all, thanks for the presentation and for the opportunity to comment. I'm new to this, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. According to the application available online dated on September 20th, it mentions creating additional housing in a location that aligns with the shift in lifestyle preferences identified in the POCD. My question is, does this shift in lifestyle preferences also change housing style preferences people desire? Do people no longer want their own backyards? The development appears to lack sufficient green space for residents and perhaps their pets, seeming instead to be dominated by impervious surfaces and buildings. The application states that the development addresses the need of the baby boomer generation, who reportedly have an increased demand for downsizing options. It also notes that the town has a shortage of small units and an oversupply of larger ones. According to the POCD, under the section of multi-generation households, larger homes are defined as those with 4 or more bedrooms. Each of the proposed dwelling units contains 4 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms, based on the information available online. In approximately 2,200 square feet. These seem like quite large units, at least to me. For baby boomers looking to downsize, do they actually need this much space? And would they want to live near shopping centers and a high traffic area during retirement? And do the people who are over 60 years old want to walk 3 levels to reach a bedroom? I'm not sure about that. Perhaps some baby boomers here could share their opinions. The application also claims that the proposed building architecture is in character with the neighborhood. I don't see how, given that all nearby buildings are 1 or 2 stories. The only structures that might align with the development's height are the beautiful trees between 430 to 450 Stilson Road. Due to this development, it seems that over 40 evergreen trees, approximately 40 to 50 feet tall, will be cut down. These are the trees currently visible from the shopping center on Black Rock Turnpike. These tall trees help filter pollutants from the air and produce oxygen, improving overall air quality. Their roots absorb rainwater, reducing runoff, flooding, and soil erosion. I'm not sure the proposed landscaping and planting can achieve the same environmental benefits. The application further mentions that this project provides missing middle housing, described as a range of buildings with multiple units that are compatible in scale and form with detached single-family homes. However, the proposed architecture does not resemble single-family homes in size or appearance. While there has been growing awareness that not all multifamily housing needs to be in large condo or apartment buildings per POCD, the height of this development exceeds that of nearby buildings. Placing 4 missing middle housing buildings on the property makes the development appear dense, similar to an apartment complex, from my point of view. In response to the discussion earlier about pricing, the cheapest condo or co-op or townhouse that are closed in Fairfield in the last 365 days between 2,000 to 2,500 square feet was 725,000. And I'm assuming the developer will price each unit higher because it's a new build to maybe like 825,000. And with this dollar amount, we will probably have other current options of single family around town. Additionally, I'm concerned about issues that have not been addressed, such as roll-out trash pickup per unit. Do we expect 38 bins, 1 garbage and 1 recycle per unit on the road on garbage day? There is also a lack of a designated no parking zone on Stilson Road near the property. If residents and guests in the development run out of parking spaces, there's a risk that they will park on Student Road, causing further congestion. On page 22 of the traffic report, the levels of service for signaled intersections are defined in terms of control delay, which measures driver discomfort, frustration, fuel consumption, and increased travel time. On page 4, under the section intersection capacity analysis, levels of service range from A through F, with F representing the longest average delays. In most communities, levels of service D is considered acceptable per report. According to table 3, at the intersection of Stilson Road and Black Rock Turnpike, the majority of movements received an F rating. The analysis also indicates that there will be no further degradation of the level of service at this intersection caused by the development's traffic, and that's because the intersection is already at the worst rating and is not considered acceptable according to the report. If the developer can work on addressing the actual demand of expensive townhouses, environmental, traffic, and safety issue in the area, the project of missing middle housing could be viable. However, at this time, I do not believe it is safe or prudent to develop such a large number of units on the proposed property. Thank you.
Thank you. Another member of the public at this time? Good evening.
Just hold this
Yes, please. Close to your.
closer.
Yes, please.
Okay. Amy Hannanen, I live at 735 Naps Highway and I have lived in Fairfield for 39 years. This concept of basically a developer suggesting how you should adjust our zoning regulations is sort of troubling. And they're saying that you need to do that to accommodate this particular project. And they're saying that we need this kind of project because we're missing middle housing. But this isn't really middle housing. It's like we may need middle housing. And they're saying that this is middle housing, but it isn't. And as the woman who just spoke said, we're being told that aging baby boomers will want this housing, but these buildings are 4 stories high. But baby boomers aren't going to be climbing 4 flights of stairs. I mean, I think it's 4, including the attic. And these units have 4.5 bathrooms. That's not middle housing. You know, these units are too big to be middle housing. So we may need that. But if we're being asked to tweak our zoning to accommodate something that's too big because we're being told it's middle housing, that train of thought, I don't think is a good train of thought. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Another member of the public, please in person. See Attorney Green. You want to jump at him, sir?
Yeah.
Attorney Green, you can jump up. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, commissioners. My name is John Serio. I live at 62 Pansy Road. I've been living there well, actually, I lived at 36 Pansy Road when I first moved here in 1999, and now I live at 62. One of the issues I have is when you look at the traffic study for this development, it was done by SLR, and it was conducted on a Wednesday, July 19th. Now, that's during the summer. As we all know, there are 2 schools in the area. There's Osborne Hills School, there's Fairfield University School. So how can we get an accurate traffic study during the summer when none of these schools are in session? And not only are students being transported to the school, you have teachers, custodians, paralegals, etc. So I feel that this study should be redone during the regular year, September through before the end of school, when we really get a true reading, not on a July day when there's no school in session. So that's my first issue I have, that this traffic report is flawed and can't be accurate to what is really going on in the area. And I am very familiar with the area because, like I said, Pansy Road, right down the street, and I travel on that. And the other thing is this intersection of Black Rock Turnpike and Stilson Road is very unique in this town. Is one of the busiest intersections in town. There have been many crashes that have been documented in one of these studies in the past. And I think everybody will agree that it is getting more and more congested. And I know the property has to be developed one way or another, and I can see the need for this type of housing, maybe not. But I'm of the opinion that single family homes should be built on this property in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood without having to go through all these zoning changes and amendments and all of that kind of stuff. Like I said, the developer, if you're familiar with Malin's Road over there off North Benson, several years ago, they built a lot of single family homes in that area, which are very nice. So there is a profit to be made by the developer, even if he does stick with the single family homes. So, and also in 2017, the TPZ denied an application for the Bridges by Epic at Fairfield, a memory care. I don't know if any of you remember that. Yeah. So there was a police report done, a traffic report done, and the police department traffic report found the limited, the exiting and such from this development at that time, that one was insufficient. So my question, has a Fairfield Police Department traffic study been conducted on this application?
Normally, we don't answer, it's time for public comment. It's not back and forth with the public. And considering that the special permit has been withdrawn, it's even less, I guess, of an issue at this point. So I don't know the answer to that. And that would be something the applicant would need to address if and when the applicant comes back with a special permit.
Okay. Also, in the regulations, TPZ regulations, section 10.9, 10.91, there shall be no more than 4 dwelling units in any single building. Okay, so it is, when you look at the plans, there are 2 buildings that exceed that number of units. Now, is that going to be addressed in these amendments? That, there are building 1 and building 2 exceed 4 units.
But yeah, you can ask the questions for the applicant.
Okay. Well, I could ask him now. Is that what you're saying?
Well, ask him through me is my point. So just, you have questions, you have issues, bring them up to the commission, and the applicant's listening. Until I'm on rebuttal.
Okay.
What was that section you said?
10.9.1.
Go ahead.
So just in closing, yeah, there was another thing under future conditions on, on this SLR report here. They said that there were no other buildings in the area that would have an effect on this traffic and such on this development. But however, a 26-unit apartment has just been approved across the street. The Vimini building? Okay, so there are gonna be, that's a 26-unit apartment. So let's figure, for the heck of it, 26 vehicles, probably more, are gonna be heading across Black Rock Turnpike. If they want to take 95 going, south to work, whatever, they're gonna be passing by this, through this intersection, past this development. So there's more traffic than meets the eye. And also, when they do the study, I wonder, do they take into account the delivery trucks like Amazon and service vehicles, such as electricians, landscapers, food deliveries, Ubers? Are they included in these numbers of vehicles? I don't believe they are. So my main concern is safety for children who are walking through that area, going to Osborne School. And I've seen them myself passing right through that area. And making when you're exiting this property, this development, and you wish to go north on Stilson Road towards Black Rock Turnpike, that may be a very difficult endeavor, because a lot of times you're going to have cars queued up heading north at the traffic light. And I've seen it where it goes almost to Fairfield University, literally, especially during the beginning of the school year. And these people that are going to try to hang a left onto Black Rock Turnpike, onto Stilson Road rather, are going to have to maybe make a right and then try to go down Melody Lane, Stilson Road, Stilson Place, Melody Lane, and use that as a turnaround to get back on Stilson Road North. So I see a lot of traffic issues here with this. And once again, I'm not against developing this property. I'm for keeping it down to a minimum of vehicles to kind of keep down the traffic situation. Like I said, this is one of the busiest intersections in our town. And I just think that this is the wrong place for this development. This is a unique area of town. And like I said, middle housing, great concept, but not in this area here. And I urge all the commissioners to take all of that into consideration. And I appreciate your time for listening to me. And thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. You're welcome.
Hi, I was here on Tuesday. I live on 128 Sterling Street in Fairfield. I just want to say very quickly, I understand obviously it's another development. My aunt lives on Stilson, so I cut through on Judd to get to the other end of Stilson. And I'm just absolutely flabbergasted again that they're putting a big development in between these tiny Cape homes. It just doesn't fit. I don't understand where Fairfield is putting in developments in between small Cape homes. Fairfield has property. So why isn't Fairfield stepping up if they need affordable homes using their own property and putting in affordable homes on their own property? Why are people coming in, taking down small Cape homes, putting in affordable homes that are for baby boomers or whoever they're labeling need 4-story homes, and putting in where old people are supposed to climb up 4 stories and need 2,500 square feet homes with 3 bathrooms? That is hideous. It's such an excuse to be able to make a fortune of money. It's not reasonable. It's not. Nobody believes it. I mean, do any of you really truly believe this? They're going to make millions of dollars. They're buying a $500,000 piece of property and going to make $3-4 million a year on this. Nobody believes it. Nobody here believes this, right? They're going to make a fortune of money. They're not doing it for affordable homes. They don't care about the community. They don't care about making like you know, affordable housing for Fairfield County. They're doing it to make money. Let's all really admit what they're here for. He's a builder, he's a developer. Come on, let's admit it. That's what they're here for.
Green? Jump in.
You want speakers remotely as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn to them after. Well, let me just see, is there any other member of the public after Attorney Green that wishes to be heard? Right now, I always take people in person. There are people signing in remotely, so I can, it's not your only chance after Attorney Green, but I'll jump to them unless somebody raises their hand. So, Green, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, again, for the record, Joel Green, representing Stilson LLC. And I think in fairness, I just want to share some of the general themes that I'll present at the next hearing so that the applicant can respond to them so that it's a fair process. I want to talk about sort of the use of this aspirational draft plan of conservation and development to sort of stretch these developments forward and sort of temper that a little bit. I am pleased that the application is now unhitched from the special permit and stands on its own so that the commission can really exercise a true planning function and sort of separate it from the aspirations of this developer. I think that if the commission is inclined to consider these revisions as they've been proposed, that at present there's a real lack of background data. And the commission asked a number of questions on potential impacts. And I think that the applicant should really fill in some of the blanks on what the true impacts are. Now, and I think the commission understands the process and understands that there is a review process before these zones are established, but there have been some ideas expressed by the applicant that I think require real thought. And once again, I think that the applicant should provide more data on what the townwide potential impacts are, sort of what is being created through these amendments. I find I'm particularly interested in the applicant's comments on the sort of one size fits all approach on density throughout all the zones in which this is proposed. In other words, the sort of removing those different ratios in different zones. I think we have to think about the possibility of sort of giant developments on giant parcels and smaller developments on smaller parcels. I think the commission may want to think about imposing some regulations on how units are distributed on these properties if we are going to use this approach where there's a 9,750 foot sort of beginning number and then 1 unit per 3,000 feet of land area. I think with some larger parcels, the commission may want to be concerned with how the development is distributed over the land on which it sits, and because the possibility is that you could end up with a very concentrated and large development on a larger parcel in one spot.
Are you, finish your thought, because I have a question on that, sorry.
I don't have an answer on it. That's just.
No, but you might. I guess the concern you're raising, I guess, concerns 10.6, the regulation, proposed regulation amendments of 10.6.
Yes.
Are you more concerned that they were deleting in the subsections 1 through 6, the maximum allowable density? So that it's just like you get this ratio and it's applied to 30 acres.
One
and
size fits all, sort of. Yeah, I am. And I'm not necessarily even saying, when I saw it and I just wanted to discuss it with the commission, I think we have to really think about what the impacts are. And I recognize that there's a need for this sort of housing, but I also think that we have to move thoughtfully in sort of creating these housing opportunities. I think that the commission,
that Commissioner Randolph's comments on landscaping, I am not sure that you should simply rely on the special permit standards, because these are special cases, in my view, that require a higher level of protection in terms of landscape buffers and those sorts of features and sort of on-site features to sort of lessen the impact, particularly if you are considering, once again, this density, this change in how density is calculated. I think that the commission should think about imposing requirements for, in this modern environment, and we talk about it all the time, but imposing requirements for dedicated delivery spaces on these sites. And I know that the commission has those sort of regulations for loading spaces, but if you are going to start having higher density developments, potentially that, you know, in every application we get up now and talk about the volume of deliveries, particularly this time of year, and maybe the commission should consider a space or spaces, depending on the number of units, that would accommodate UPS, Amazon, FedEx, and everything else coming, and even impose like parking times potentially, or models for that, so that these sites can circulate properly. And once again, also proper provision for access of emergency vehicles throughout the site. And I think I've given the applicant hopefully a lot to think about. And I don't anticipate being long at the next session of the commission, and I greatly appreciate the accommodation and the opportunity to review the documents and come back. And happy holidays to one and all.
Thank you. Question for Attorney Green?
No, anyways, yeah.
All right, can we go through comments and we'll maybe at the end. I asked a member in person, let's go remote.
So remotely, we have Matthew Halleck first and then Alan Stewart Jr.
Alec. Mr. Halleck.
It's gone, so let's go to Stewart Jr.
I can't turn my camera on, but
We hear you.
All right, awesome. I'm Alan Stewart Jr. I live at 371 Fairfield Woods Road. I'm a third generation Fairfield resident and a board member on the Stratfield Village Association. I won't speak to the application that's been pulled down or pulled back, but I did want to speak to I do believe that there is a need for some type of middle housing. I follow closely to the applications of the 830G, and I believe that there's a moratorium coming up. I assume that applications are going to be coming in substantially. I just wanted to, I don't want to speak too much this time because I do agree with Attorney Green. Like, I think that a little bit more information needs to be provided, but it's my understanding that it's kind of like an on-ramp from the business district into the residential districts, kind of like a transition style type of housing where it can be not as dense as low-income housing or the 830G housing, where the density is very high, where we have it on Moritz, or it was originally suggested when Sunrise Living went up, if they weren't going to get through, they were going to go through with it. So I do think that we do need this middle ground. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see these 830G projects popping up in residential areas. And if you go over like, again, I'm not talking about this specific project, but if you go over to like Katona Drive, right off of Black Rock Turnpike, which it was like one block down, you know, that has a nice transition from the business district. It is condos and then goes into residential, but the issue is we don't have enough land for condos anymore. So I think that finding somehow that type of happy medium to go from high traffic areas into the residential areas Otherwise, if we don't find something like this, one thing I am seeing a lot of is a lot of these single family houses being pulled down and then duplexes or triplexes going up. For example, if you go into the Tunxus Hill neighborhood, new construction in that neighborhood may run you like $900,000. And then they're throwing up duplexes that are running probably like 750,000. However, those are kind of out of place because those are traditionally residential neighborhoods, where if we did do some type of text amendment where it's segueing off of a business district into a residential district, I do think that it would be less of like the public opinion eyesore of those primary residential areas. Now, that being said, that's just in theory. I did think that a lot of the other opinion, like obviously it would have to be in my opinion subject to special permits, because like any transition from a business district into a residential district, it can look different with the traffic. In some neighborhoods, in some streets, it would work really well. Some neighborhoods it wouldn't. So I don't think it would be a blanket text amendment that would just all of a sudden you buy a house next to a business district and you can throw up some type of whatever's permitted high density. But I do think that there is definitely some type of need for it. And also it may ease the 830G applications that, we're currently getting, but also that I believe that we're going to continue to get in the future, especially because again, that memorandum or moratorium, I believe we're applying for one. So I assume we're going to get a high volume of them. I believe one just came in on Tunxus Hill recently. So that's just my opinion in general on like middle housing. So that is it. I close.
Thank you. Who's the first gentleman?
I think he jumped off.
I'm going to say, Mr. Halleck, are you there? Joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. No, I'm going to, yeah. Is that all you had signed up? Is there any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone that wishes to be heard in this application? Please press *6 if you're joining by phone to unmute yourself. Any member of the public in person or remote or by phone that wishes to be heard in the application? As I said, we'll keep public comment open for our next session, which do we have an idea where that would be?
I cannot give you a date.
Yeah, we can't.
right now.
Yep. So certainly by early next year, we should have a better idea. It'll be posted. As mentioned, we are very busy, and yes, we are busy because of applications due to the moratorium. Yeah,
Harrison, I know had some
yeah,
questions.
and I don't mind. This is not your official rebuttal, but we will. I had a potential point as well, but I think that's good for the public. Commissioner Harrison, I don't want to insult you.
No worries. Yeah, I do want to thank you for your thoughtful presentation today. Just and I just want to be clear that having more of these dense developments, that doesn't replace, won't replace 830G. I mean, we're still going to be not exempt from that. So just to be clear on that. But would you, in this text amendment, would you consider, we have that inclusionary zoning regulation where you have more than, to create 100% affordable.
That remains.
Okay.
So that remains, which is
Would you
important.
consider, my question is, would you, I don't need an answer tonight, would your client maybe consider a higher percentage than just the 10? I don't need an answer tonight, but just something to mull over.
I'll talk to that.
Okay, that's all I had to say.
The other question I will say in response to something, a couple of things that's important to note is that there's a couple of requirements that you have. So for example, you talked about multiple attached housing. We didn't have to do any amendment to that, multiple units attached, because if you're located next to a design business district, that you're exempt from that. The other thing that's important that people have to understand is this isn't going to fly up everywhere. There's still the limitation. You have to be on a major or a collector road. So what ends up happening, I think Mr. Stewart said it best, is these will tend to be your transitional developments, which also support your whole, walkability concept your density along those, corridors. So I don't want to leave the impression, although that applies to many districts. Maybe I have a map that we'll bring next time, but when you show, where these collector roads are, you're talking about dense areas already. So you don't have to worry
Not
about,
only
it's in a
that-
AAA zone, that it's gonna end up next to some farm. It
Not
won't,
only that, I guess that was the other point, I think possibly to Attorney Green's point, but even in general, when we were talking about the AAA, the lot has to be able to accommodate the units.
correct.
So you're probably not gonna be able to have 30 times 12 on the AAA because there's no sewer there.
Correct.
And I doubt that there's gonna be enough, I mean, I don't know enough about not sewer, what's the other one? Septic that would accommodate.
One of
that.
the other things is there's a requirement of sewer. So it'll take a good portion of the town, city sewer, city water. So if there's wells, if there's septic, you can't apply for in a DRD.
I mean, the only thing I'll say that caught Attorney Green, maybe just something to mull over, is his idea though about this, your 10.6 being a one size fit all. Has some, catches my attention where you have a 1 acre zone, I think, right? You're in A. I mean, maybe it might be worth thinking about with R2 and up, if it's scaled back a bit, so to speak. So it's not the 30 times 12 that we talked about. But we don't.
Yeah, one thing I'll bring about, Commissioner, and probably in rebuttal, which I planned, is I have maps that show kind of where these DRDs would be available, and then kind of showing the zones that surround them.
Please put that up a week in advance. If you don't mind, please. Anything, please just put up a week in advance, especially now that we've got, I know it's the holidays and stuff, but we're gonna have some time in between now and the next session. I think that's it.
I got a question for Commissioner Noonan.
Oh.
So could you clarify the process that we're going through here?
The public, go ahead.
The text amendment was proposed.
Yeah.
Feedback was received. What's our next step?
Public comment will remain open to the next session. The public can feel free to come at the next session that this is scheduled to talk about really anything with respect to the regulation amendments. I'm not gonna, it's just too hard of a line to keep you to so anything that needs to be discussed in the, with the regulation amendments the next time, please don't repeat yourself if you've already spoken. And then rebuttal, and then we close.
And will the, since there's been comment provided, specifically you just suggested some topics to review, will the applicant have a chance to discuss their submission?
I mean, if they so choose, the applicant, like I said, make any adjustments within, a week. I would be mindful though, as we always said, if you make adjustments that are outside of the footprint of your application, you risk having to renotice and have a rehearing on it. So
There was also suggestions that the commission independently can add, you can add to an amended regulation versus me as a proposal. So your discussions with regard to landscaping, your discussions with regard to some, you have the right to add language that would satisfy your concerns that I don't miss.
no, that's true. I would still argue that would require a rehearing, so to speak, because it's going outside of what has been heard and the public had an opportunity. But I would just be mindful if we're gonna make any adjustments, it should be within the footprint of what's been proposed, so to speak. Because otherwise you risk the public not having a chance to speak on it, which is a fundamental.
Again, for the benefit of us who are not lawyers, how do you define the footprint of the?
Let me give you an example. 10.6.1, potentially, they've stricken it. Maybe we can put the language back in and adjust the units per acre. That's.
So it's fairly limited.
It's limited, I would think. Mr. Weiner, you help?
I mean, you can generally make something more restrictive than is
Okay.
originally
There's the
proposed.
better way
You
to say
can't
it.
make it more permissive without starting again.
So many of the suggestions were more restrictive, so the applicant has the opportunity to add restrictive items without going outside the footprint.
Yes.
Okay. Which I think is generally what the feedback.
But I think if you're gonna add a new regulation like for landscaping, I think would require a new hearing.
Okay.
But I think it's also covered by special permit and stuff like that, so.
Yes, okay. We don't need to address that.
One last question, Chairman. No issue, because I may have issues scheduling, so there's no issue with regard to me doing a rebuttal by Zoom? Okay.
Great. Anything further?
I was just gonna comment, if you're adjusting parking space ratios and guest spaces, it's certainly, I think, within the jurisdiction of the commission to add loading space requirements and that sort of thing as part of that adjustment. That's all.
I'm gonna defer tonight. I'm a little tired. Okay.
Aren't you glad I withdrew two of my application?
Well, I mean, Mr. Wentz mad at me. I haven't been able to close a hearing in weeks now, so.
not bad.
Doesn't get that.
All right,
Well, I
so
would assume, Chairman, one thing is, it hopefully will helpful, rather than continue into, I think would have been a whole nother full night if we were doing the entire thing.
essentially, yes.
If you added us on with another night that they're
No, you're
doing
right.
another application, I would expect my rebuttal to be relatively short. And Mr. Green will, I'm sure, be concise, and this would, I would hope, be,
No, it's fine. I just, we have,
accomplished a lot.
I meant that more as a joke, because we have 3 or 4 pending hearings in the air, so to speak. So I appreciate everybody's cooperation, communication. I will adjourn here the meeting. The application and public comment remains open. Thank you, everyone.